Well, welcome everybody to the Bellevue City Council meeting. This is a study session on June 25th, 2024. City Clerk, could you do the roll call, please?
Mayor Robinson?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Malcolm?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Lee?
Here.
Councilmember Newhouse?
Here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
And Councilmember Dodd?
Here. Could you join me in the flag salute, please? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I ask for a motion, I want to mention that we are removing item 4B, Transportation Commission Appointment Recommendation from tonight's agenda. And with that, do I have a motion?
I move to remove item 4B from tonight's meeting and approve the agenda as modified.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I didn't hear Councilmember Lee and Neuenhouse. Did you vote?
I don't have position, so I go vote aye.
Okay, so we have 6 ayes, 7 with council members on. Okay. Oral communications. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This evening there are 6 total pre-registered speakers. So before I start calling names, I'll go over a few of the rules that the council has in place. So the total time for oral communications is not to exceed a period of 30 minutes. People speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and then people speaking on items not on tonight's agenda will be called. The presiding officer is authorized in both of those categories to give preference to those who have not spoken to council in the last 60 days or who will be speaking on topics that will come in front of the council within the next 60 days. Speakers will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak, and only 3 speakers will be allowed to speak to any one side of a particular topic. So with that, I'll call our first speaker, who is joining us, I believe, virtually, and that is Neil Molnick. Mr. Molnick, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Great. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of the council. My name is Neil Molnick. We own the property where the Ford dealership is located on 116th and 4th. We are thrilled to see the Wilburton vision approach the finish line after so much hard work by staff, Planning Commission, and the council. Wilburton is poised to be Bellevue's next great urban transit-oriented development with the substantial public investments in the neighborhood, including light rail stations, road network improvements, East Trail, and the upcoming Grand Connection crossing. These far-sighted investments provide a solid footing for an exciting land use and development vision. We urge the council to pass the proposed policies and future land use map as recommended by the Planning Commission. These policies and broad zoning are an exciting step towards a flexible market-driven approach for Wilburton. Bellevue is in a housing crisis paired with a very tough development cycle. We're excited to continue working on the land use code amendment process with staff, Planning Commission, and council. It's important that the LUCA process follows in the footsteps of the great policies and map that are in front of you tonight. Time is of the essence to set the stage for Wilburton so it can start to develop as soon as possible. Bellevue and Wilburton have an incredible opportunity, and we're excited to be a part of it. Thanks for your time and all your hard work.
Thank you. The next speaker on our list is Bill Finkbeiner. You can if you want to. Do you want to? Okay. Okay, we're going to go with a different speaker, John Darvish.
Good afternoon, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malakutian, council members. My name is John Darvish, and I'm a property owner across the street from Overlake Hospital, the 1200 building, as known by many. I'm here to thank the Planning Commission, the planning staff, on their hard work to put together the future land use map. And I'm here to urge the City Council to pass it as is, with no modifications. I will start with a brief history and then move into a few observations. The area across Overlake Hospital on 116th Avenue from Northeast A to Bellred used to be all medical office until very recently. Even with the last round of upzoning, it did not inspire any new medical office. In fact, the last one dates back to 1985, with many buildings dating back to 60s and 70s. Planning Commission, after careful examination of all the facts and data and the economic data, recommended and voted on mixed use for that area across the street from Overlake. This was a vote of 6-1, with 6 commissioners in favor of mixed use. Let's now examine a few things. Planning Commission saw the potential for Wilburton and the area across from Overlake Hospital in particular to be a vibrant community of people walking, gathering, dining, shopping, using the trails, hopping on and off the rail, and basically creating an around-the-clock, dynamic, lively neighborhood. One commissioner even referred to it as Manhattan of Bellevue. Planning Commission did not envision this area to be a ghost town after 4 p.m. Bellred, with all the goodwill, the support, the infrastructure, has not been able to create a buzz that it once promised. And you may ask why. It's because the abundance of office buildings and the shortage of housing. But we can avoid this in Wilburton. Planning staff assigned disproportionate amount of land dedicated to medical office in its land use map. You can see 3.5 million square feet dedicated to medical office, whereas only 2.5 million square feet dedicated to mixed use. I thought we started the whole Wilburton project because we were in the housing crisis, and we were mandated by the state to look for opportunities to create housing. I have many more things to say, but I will just stop here. But thank you for the opportunity, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Steve Kramer.
Hello, Mayor Robinson and Deputy Mayor Malakutian and fellow council members. I'm Steve Kramer from KG Investment Properties. Nice to be here in front of you again. As you may know, we are developing the 7-acre site in Wilburton at the intersection of East Trail and Grand Connection. We've been a member of East Trail Partners, Friends of Grand Connection, and Wilburton Property Owners Group since its inception, and just have a huge passion for trail-oriented development. And I'm here to support the approval of the Wilburton Vision Comprehensive Plan Amendment recommendation. I want to thank you, the Planning Commission, city staff, and the public for all the work that has gone into this effort since the Citizens Advisory Committee first convened on the Wilburton TOD 8 years ago. We've long been supporters of this vision for Wilburton, and this plan establishes a roadmap for a world-class live, work, and play neighborhood, unique to the Puget Sound. We got our first glimpse of this future a month or so ago when we attended the grand opening of the 2 line. And judging by the huge crowds, the public's energy and enthusiasm for the train was enormous. And just this past weekend, I also attended the opening of the Northeast 8th Bike Pedestrian Bridge, which brings us one step closer to the completion of East Trail through Bellevue. Construction has also started on the Wilburton Trestle, and the final missing piece, the I-90 Steel Bridge, the last obstacle connecting us to Renton, has just been selected and announced today for a large federal grant to help fund its construction. These milestones produce ever more excitement around the Grand Connection. And with the adoption of this plan, we can imagine the same level of activity through Wilburton TOD on a daily basis that we witnessed at the opening of the 2 line. As people who live and work there, along with visitors from everywhere seeking recreation, arts, entertainment, and community events, move about the neighborhood on foot, bicycle, and the train. With multiple light rail stations, the East Trail as its spine, the Grand Connection to downtown, unmatched freeway and arterial road access, and 5 existing grocery stores in Wilburton, you'd be hard-pressed to find an area more perfectly positioned to realize everything that this plan seeks to achieve. The comp plan amendment is a great start, and we support it. But this is not the end of the process. In order to convert this dream into reality, there needs to be development regulations that provide a feasible path to the future we all want to see. This will be challenging work to develop rules and codes that will attract capital from all around the world to bring this Wilburton vision to life, and zoning rules that will catalyze housing development from day one. We are ready to work with you and staff to create a set of development regulations that will work to do so, and we thank you for your continued leadership in Wilburton. Thank you.
So I'm hearing 3-4 in support of what's being presented tonight.
We do have a fourth speaker for this particular topic.
So we can suspend the rules if we want to do that, or we can just leave it at 3. It's really up to
Yes.
council.
Yes.
So where's council on that? Would you like to make a change tonight since we're in a study session and we're taking input on this, or have you heard enough? What do you think, Councilmember Newenhouse?
I'm completely fine with it.
Okay.
I think, there's precedent for suspending rules. I think we could do that. I second that.
Okay,
Okay, our fourth person on that topic is Bill Finkbeiner.
okay, great.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, and I appreciate you allowing me time to speak. I ceded my time to Mr. Darvish because he had obviously an issue that he wanted to make sure you understood. So I appreciate you taking the time for all of us. And I'll keep my comments brief. I'm here on behalf of the Wilburton Property Owners Group. My name is Bill Finkbeiner. I own and manage some properties in the Wilburton area. And the Wilburton Properties Owners Group really appreciates the work of both the Planning Commission and the planning staff. I attended several of those Planning Commission meetings, and those people are working hard for their money, let me tell you. A lot of 11 o'clock meetings. They're really putting the time in. And it turned out great with this future land use map and the comp plan recommendations. And we, the Wilburton Property Owners Group, urge the City Council to move forward and adopt the map and without changes as put forward by the Commission. As has been said before, the billions of dollars of multimodal investments made in the Wilburton commercial zone really offer the opportunity for the city of Bellevue to create a vibrant new neighborhood that can offer something different for the city and the region and help the city achieve their growth and economic goals. And Wilburton Property Owners Group believes the future land use map for Wilburton that was proposed by the Planning Commission will allow this area to achieve those goals that the city has set. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker on the list is Pam Johnston.
Pamela Johnston. First thing I'd like to talk about is Vancouver, Washington, 190, Bellevue 1. Now, what am I talking about? Am I talking about the history? Well, let's talk about why they're like us and why they're not like us. They have the same number of council members, but they elect their mayor separately. You guys, we trust you to elect our mayor. They have a city manager who was here for 14 years. We don't have quite that much, but we had a really good one. We have billions in our budget. They have millions. They have more people than we have. And they have 190 candidates for city council, for city manager, unlike us who have one. Now, I don't know about you, but I have been in the position where I was working to have to get hired for my job from my own manager. And you know what? I did it, and it wasn't that bad. But it's not the risk that we would have to take when we're looking at things like Sammamish or Longview, where they have, or I'm sorry, I forgot the name of the other town, where they've lost 400,000, 200,000 because they had to terminate their city manager. Now, some of it is politics. One team gets in, one team gets out. They fire the city manager. That can happen. Sometimes it's an ethics violation. The thing of it is we're putting a lot of money into the city manager. Just like Vancouver, it's one of the highest paid jobs around. Now, we have a bigger budget, we got more people, we've got some history here. But I think that city council is very powerful in the city. City manager is also very powerful. He doesn't have a whole family who we have to talk about behind their backs, kind of. But the city manager, he or she, I should say, is a very powerful force in Bellevue. And we trust you to pick it for us. And I want to thank Mo for voting no on the plan from the previous week. Because I think that our plan requires a typical cycle where we get the feedback from the people that we need, not just a survey that some people see, some people don't, but even, I've sent you guys the typical steps that almost everybody, including Bellevue in its previous history, has done, including set a timeline, get a national, hire a national company, build a candidate pool, have finalists, interview the finalists, and have the people get to talk to that finalist and see what they think and give you feedback. Thank you. Do the right thing.
Thank you. The final speaker on our list is Alex Zimmerman.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. Yeah. Oh, Jewish stupid man. Oh, time. You steal my time. You always crook. Okay, my name is Alex Zimmerman. I'm president of Stand Up America. You prosecute me a couple of weeks ago 4 times. So right now, Bellevue prosecute me 4 times. I only one dissident in state Washington, who a Jew, who prosecute 4 times. I don't think so this happened before for 150 years from beginning. Yeah. Who did this? This under supervision or mayor, who pure Nazi anti-Semite, and his best friend, you know what it means? Iranian Muslim who born with anti-Semite blood inside. Right now I explain
Mr.
to you-
Zimmerman,
What?
what on earth?
What?
What on earth?
What?
What is your point? You need to speak to
I'm
something that
sorry,
the
I don't
council
speak- I don't
has
speak
something to do
English.
with.
I need translator. Next time you supposed to provide for me translator. I don't understand what you're talking.
Okay, I'd like you to speak only to something.
You stopping
That
my
has to
time.
do with
you
the city
make this
council.
trick. You are a dirty Nazi, Gestapo, anti-Semite. You
Thank
always
you.
make this trick. Why are you tricking this like this?
Mayor,
So-
I object to the comments here, it's disparaging.
Oh, another right now. Yeah, absolute. So I have 4. 3 before, 2 dismiss, 1, what is prosecute me you for my class action against Department of Social and Health Service for $100 million, what is I win. So what's happened in court? After 2 jury trial, your policeman, harsh, you know what it means, die in jury trial from heart attack.
Okay,
He cannot
This
handle
has nothing to do with the Bellevue City Council right now, okay? So either
No, I
you
don't
change your topic to
understand.
something
I
that
don't
we
understand. I talk
have
about-
jurisdiction over.
Okay, you are Nazi, Gestapo, anti-Semite pig is doing this with council. Why you always interrupt me? I cannot understand. You prosecute me 4 times, not enough. Nobody in state Washington have this, not enough, and you don't give me chance to speak. So who are you? You are Nazi, Gestapo, anti-Semite pig.
All right, you
no,
know what? Here's the deal.
No,
You- no,
stop
listen to
in
me
time.
for just a
I
minute.
can listen to you.
You can stop his
steal
time.
my time. I'm
You
sick
can
and
stop
tired
his time.
from this dirty trick. What
You
is
can
you doing
stop
in
his
every
time.
meeting? You cannot do this. You want to talk? No problem. Stop in time.
Mr. Zimmerman, you cannot insult people, disparage them, and lead people to believe things that are lies
I
about them.
doing everything by law.
So I'm gonna
I not
ask
use
you-
one not legal word.
I'm gonna ask
I
you to
not
stop.
Use one not legal word.
I'm gonna
You
ask you to stop.
anti-Semite, You are Nazi and you Gestapo. It's exactly what is you prosecute
I
me.
think we're done here.
Everything what is a use is illegal and approved by 9th Circle.
Officer,
I
would
can
you mind
bring you
escorting
copy
Mr.
from 9th
Zimmerman
Circle.
out of the
What is you
council
want?
meeting? Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
You interrupt me in every meeting. Why? Is stopping microphone, stopping my time? Why you use policemen? Like political policemen?
That is the end of our pre-registered list.
Like
So
this,
at
Papa?
this point, I would ask if there is anyone else joining us in the meeting this evening that would like to make a comment. We do still have a few minutes left. Please raise your hand. Okay, Mayor, I'll turn it back to you. I see no hands.
Okay. The views reflected in this room do not reflect the council. Yeah, all right. So moving on, we have council business and new initiatives. We have 4 items, but one of them is a read, or 2 of them, I think, are read only. So, let's see, we have 2 items and 2 are read only. So the first one is council liaison recommendations for appointments to the Independent Salary Commission. Councilmember Stokes and I held interviews with, I believe, 9 candidates and selected 5. All were very qualified. One did not live in Bellevue, so we could not select that person. But we interviewed with Joy St. Germain and Charmaine and have the following recommendations. So could I have a motion to appoint, please? Go ahead.
Yeah, I move to appoint Lori McCray Keller, Claire Simadwari, Tan Line, Byron Rodriguez, and Mona Shen to the Independent Salary Commission.
All the, oh, is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor say,
the discussion.
yes, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
Let's have some discussion on this. Thank you. Appreciate the time you're giving me. I want to thank all the applicants. And if any of you here or watching us, you have my deepest appreciation to volunteer to serve in one of the most important tasks, to figure out how to have adequate resources, incentives, and recognition for city council members and mayors and vice mayor. So I think, I have some concerns, however, about the process moving forward, because we have not addressed a number of things that I'm talking about. We, according to the
Councilmember
yeah.
Lee, can I just stop you for a
Yeah,
second and ask
sure.
Charmaine a question?
Yeah.
So we are voting, I can't see you. We are voting on a salary commission. We've already voted to create a salary commission that will make a recommendation working with a consultant. And then their recommendation, we do not vote on. So at this point, how much say do we have in the process, Charmaine? Is this a point of discussion?
Yeah, so tonight, these are on for appointment to the commission. You are correct. The decision to move forward with an independent salary commission was made in November of last year. The process going forward, HR is heavily involved with a consultant who has been hired, who will conduct the market analysis and help the commission through their work to file a final report with the city clerk by December 31st of this year.
Is there an opportunity for Councilmember Lee and any other council members to meet with the people involved in the discussion with the salary commission for him to express his thoughts about this?
At this point, HR is still working with a consultant to develop that process for the commission. There may be some engagement with the council through a survey or something similar.
Okay,
Madam Mayor,
yes.
we are voting on the appointment of the commissioners.
That's
So
right.
my vote depends on what, I have to say. So it's relevant, right? Unless we're not going to talk about anything. If this is not on the
We're
table.
only talking about these appointments.
I
That's the
know, so I'm
only thing
talking
on the
about
table. Yeah.
You know,
But I want to
I'm
give
talking
you
about
an
whether I
avenue.
vote for it or against it.
Right.
Depends on what I'm going to say.
Well, I do want to give you an avenue to communicate with Charmaine, but I don't
I
think
cannot,
this
if
is a
that's the case,
point of discussion.
I cannot vote on this. But
Okay,
I
that's
want
all
to
right.
vote on it because I want to participate. This is a very important issue. It
I
affects
feel
the
like
whole
this
city.
would have been a
Impact
good
me.
conversation to
I
have
cannot
when we
vote.
discussed whether or not to have a salary commission.
Well, yes, we should.
That
right?
would have been the good
But
time
yes,
to have this
yeah,
discussion.
we should. We already decided on that.
Right.
It's all done.
That's
Now
right.
we have an issue in front of us to vote on these individuals. So
Right.
my vote on them depends on what I'm going to have to say.
City manager, could you give us some guidance here?
I'll try, Mayor. So the Independent Salary Commission, the Salary Commission is independent. The guidelines for how they are to be set up are in your code. And as Charmaine explained, the staff from our human resources will be working with the consultant. At this point, really the council's action is to make the appointments or not to the commission. And so I think that any further information that we can provide once the consultant develops their process, we will certainly work through Charmaine to provide to the council. But I think it's important to recognize that they are an independent commission. And that's how it's set up in the process that the council selected.
Can I continue, say? Nothing I'm talking about has to do with independent or not independent, it's nothing to do with it. I want to see the vote the way I wanted it, and I like to see I can influence the other vote, the other council members also. So I
That's
may
not
get
up for
4 votes.
discussion,
I
unfortunately.
might even get 7 votes on my side. Unless you hear about it, you don't know. So I might give up my right to say about this particular vote. That's it. Unless you guys, you don't want to listen to me. For no information, you don't allow me to say anything, you just want to listen to me. In that case, I will leave this meeting. I have no use. That doesn't make sense.
City manager, if I can interject for a second, if his comments are specifically about the appointment, then that, I would think, is still
Absolutely.
valid.
Correct.
If it's about the process going forward, then that would not be a valid thing at this time to discuss. Would that be
That
accurate?
is, yes, that is accurate.
Since we've already moved this forward and we've already taken action with HR and consultant, et cetera.
That is accurate,
Okay.
council member.
That's what I said. I support this salary commission. And I, have no qualm about it. I just want to talk about why I want to see this salary commission.
We don't get to tell them what we want to see.
No, I'm not going to tell them. I'm telling about whether we vote for this now or not. That's all.
I'm gonna,
I'm going to vote.
I'm gonna
If I
add-
don't have a chance, I'm not going to. I don't need to take a motion.
Okay.
I mean, I don't even need to vote. Why bother?
okay, that's fine, that's your choice.
No, it's not my choice.
Anybody,
You are
any
forcing
other
me to do it.
comments?
I have
on
the
this?
right to vote.
Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote. All those in favor for these recommendations, say aye. Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? And Conrad is abstaining, is correct?
I'm not saying anything because I don't have a voice to
I believe
say-
that's an
to vote.
abstention, okay.
That's very unusual.
Pardon?
I've never seen any council action like this in 30 years in the council.
All right, next up
amazing.
we have,
We did this before.
it's not time for
All right.
comment, thank you.
If I can just clarify, an abstention is counted in the affirmative, so that it was a 7-0 vote.
Okay, thank you. Next up is the future of the Bellevue Library Advisory Board. This is an initiative brought forward by Councilmember Hamilton. I'm going to have him present it, why you are bringing this forward tonight.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I know everyone's had a chance to see the management brief that's in the packet, but just a couple of things I think worth pointing out. And then again, this is also in there, but library advisory boards are established by individual cities that have annexed their library systems to the King County Library. And then they periodically provide reports to council relative to the scope, quality of library services. And over the last several years, there's been an evolution of library boards, this steady trend of sunsetting library boards around the region. Of the 35 cities served by KCLS, only 9 maintain a library advisory board. Obviously, that includes us. Some of the other jurisdictions are already involved in discussions around the future of their own library boards. So there's been 2 on our library board, been several resignations this year. And I just thought before we appoint any new members, it would be worth exploring what the future of our own library board looks like. So our staff has conducted some initial research to get us to tonight. It's included in the brief, but just asking for support from all of you to continue to work with staff beyond the 8 hours to fully conduct the necessary research, outreach, and analysis to bring a recommendation to council on the future of the board.
Wonderful, thank you. Would you like staff to give any kind of report, or is that the information you wanted to convey? I know you have the rest of it in the packet. Hello, council members on. Thank you for working your way through traffic to get here.
I think if anyone has any questions, we could certainly take that up, and hopefully staff could address those. But,
Okay. Which staff were you working with on this?
So I have been working with Charmaine primarily.
Okay, so Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I appreciate the Councilmember Hamilton brought this to the council for a conversation. You know, I was the liaison to the advisory board previously. And, you know, I have my perspective. I understood the relationship. I fully agree with the position he's taking. But I'm really glad that he's bringing to the council and discuss it first. And I think that's very important. We all have our own experience, opinions. We all know what we know, and we don't know what we don't know. And we need to listen to people who know something, who has something to contribute to act the process. And I'm really very, very sad that we're not applying this principle to everything we do. Okay. No matter how important or how not important, we have to be heard. Thank you, Councilmember Hamilton.
Anybody else want to comment on the library board? Councilmember Newhouse.
Thank you. And just to reiterate on the last point, on their last vote, I do believe Councilmember Lee should have had an opportunity to speak to his point, even though I was in favor of moving that forward and voting for those applicants. But I just want to thank also Councilmember Hamilton for bringing this forward. I think it's the right time for sure to take a look at this. So just want to say my thank to you for bringing this. But I wonder if this is also a time for staff to, and I don't know if this is in the same scope, but maybe look at creating, if this opens up to create another board or commission, I would certainly like to take a look at that, and I'm sure some folks around this table have some ideas about what another commission or board might look like. For me personally, I'd love to see like a neighborhood commission put together, or a board, but I think there are other areas that we could explore as well. Perhaps that's outside the scope of this right now, but something that I just wanted to mention, if that's possible to add to the workload a little bit.
Okay, let's get some other comments and then we'll see council members on.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I appreciate you bringing this back in this way, because I think it's always good for us to evaluate from time to time the appropriateness of having different boards and commissions, especially one that, as I was coming in, I was hearing that there are only 9 out of X number of cities, and so really understanding what having our own really brings. So I appreciate that. I guess to Councilmember Newhouse's point, I would be in favor of maybe at our next retreat, that's sometime this year, instead of waiting a year from now, actually having this conversation, because I'm not sure that I would feel as comfortable just having staff go and explore expanding without actually having a conversation with the council about what some of our thoughts might be, because I have some thoughts as well about what we might want to do, and I'm assuming that others as well. Yeah, right, and so.
If we wait to retreat, I'm fine with that, okay, but I would also like to take the time where we can, look at how we would set that up, what it might be, et cetera. But I think that's a great idea. It would be a great retreat discussion item, for
Yeah,
sure.
as long as
I think
the next retreat
what I
doesn't take too
hear
long.
Councilmember Newhouse suggesting is that we examine the potential of creating a new board or commission, not which one it would be. And then I agree with you that at the retreat, that would be a good conversation if staff comes back and says, yeah, whether we have time or room.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stokes.
Just one little point on this is different from what else we were talking about. This is directing staff to conduct research and analysis to bring back a recommendation of council consideration. The council will have full consideration of this. We can't have 7 people going out doing this, so we're just getting staff to do staff work and bring this back. When you read it, it's very clear that the council will get the information at a future meeting and then make the decision. So that's different. That's at least that's the way I read it. It's
All right.
just conducting the necessary research, outreach, and analysis.
All
And
right.
recommendation comes to council.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you so much for bringing this and looking forward to staff report back.
And I'll just say that I have no problem with staff coming back to us and weighing in as to whether they think that there would be room for another board or commission with this recommendation as well. Councilmember Lee.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Councilmember Stokes that this council need to look at this. I mean, very few people know about Library Advisory Board. I don't believe most of us don't even know the full name of the board. It is not really connected directly to the rest of the commission and boards. It's very interesting, separate group. It's really run by King County Library. We are just there to have citizens living in Bellevue have a voice, input to the King County Library. So it's a very different situation. So I think in order to make a decision like this, which has been established for so many years, we need to understand, really look at it, to understand truly to what to do with it, like the suggestion Councilman Nuance made. Some of you might make some good suggestions, but without knowing how it works, without knowing anything about it, without having conversation, how do you know? This is opportunity we have. We don't want to just let it go. So this is one matter. The second matter I want to finish up is, on the last issue,
Okay, we're not going to talk about the last issue.
Let me finish it.
We're on this issue.
Let me finish it.
Please
It's
don't
relevant.
bring up the last
On
issue.
the salary commission, I don't take a position because I was really
Councilmember Lee.
frustrated. Hold on.
I'm
Let me
frustrated.
finish.
I'm
Let me
asking
fin-
you to stick
please,
to
let me
item
finish.
C.
Let me finish.
Because I need to ask Charmaine something. Hey, Charmaine, it sounds like there's a majority of people on the council who'd be interested, in addition to asking staff to do what's in this motion, to examining if we could put in another board or commission. Is that something that we could add to the motion, or is that something that would, be too much to ask staff to do in this one?
I would say that that is really a separate scope of work, but is something that we could certainly address in the future. I wouldn't want it to delay the recommendation on what to do with the library board.
Okay, but it's definitely a retreat item, and maybe that will, you want to bring it up before then, so I'll leave that up to you. So the motion stands. So could somebody make a motion, please?
Can I finish it up so that I can clearly clean this motion up, please?
You're
In the
out of
spi-
order.
In the spirit of.
Like you're literally out of order.
I'm
Tell
out
you
of
what,
order.
here's
That's
what I'm
okay.
gonna do.
In the
Listen,
spirit of.
Councilmember Lee, could you listen to me for just a moment?
Yes, I've
I'm
been
gonna
listening.
get rid of, we're gonna finish this. Because we have two silent items, I will let you take up your conversations after we finish this.
Okay.
I move to direct staff to conduct the necessary research, outreach, and analysis to bring back a recommendation for council consideration at a future meeting on the future of the Bellevue Library Advisory Board.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Councilmember Hamilton, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, I'm gonna give Councilmember Lee 3 minutes.
Yeah, I don't need 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
In the spirit, thank you, Madam Mayor. I said before in the Salary Commission, I was very frustrated. So I voted the position I did. But I think in the spirit of what Councilman Manuel has brought up, and I hope also in the spirit of the whole city council, I expressed my frustration. I put my position forward, and I would be happy. I do support having a salary commission. That's what I said first. You just didn't hear me to continue with my other suggestions and ideas because you feel somehow it's irrelevant. But I hope that will also become relevant as we move forward. So in the spirit of that, I would be glad to cast my vote as a yes vote for the salary commission.
Thank you. I believe the good news is that an abstention is counted as a yes, so we don't have to change anything. Thank you for your comments. All right, we have 2 study session items tonight. City Manager, would you like to introduce them?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this study session tonight is a special meeting that we set up specifically to allow focus on the comprehensive plan amendment for Wilburton Vision implementation. And staff will be reviewing the 2024 proposed plan amendments. These amendments would adopt the Wilburton Transit-Oriented Development Area Policies and map changes for the Wilburton Northeast 8th Street Sub-Area Plan. And staff is tonight presenting the Planning Commission recommendation. And this is an opportunity for council to discuss and ask questions. And staff is also seeking council direction on the preferred next steps towards action. So we have a good contingent of folks here tonight from Community Development. We have Emil King, our Director, Tara Johnson, Acting Planning Director, Janet Schul, Strategic Planning Manager, and Justin Panganiban, our Senior Planner and Urban Designer. And then finally, we're joined by the Planning Commission Chair, Chair Bargava. And with that, I will turn it over to Emil.
Thank you for the introduction, Acting City Manager Carlson, and good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and members of council. Staff and Planning Commission Chair Bargava are very excited to be here tonight. This is a significant milestone for the city to be contemplating the Wilburton Comprehensive Plan Amendment. This is the culmination of just over 2 years of work. It includes significant community engagement and refining the 2018 Wilburton Advisory Committee report. So it took a very good report from 2018 and really took it to the next level. So we're very proud to be bringing this forward for council consideration. The Wilburton Vision is going to establish new policies and code provisions for the transit-oriented development area east of I-405. We have 2 study sessions teed up for you tonight. The first one that we'll be doing is on the proposed comprehensive plan amendment for the Wilburton TOD area, and this is going to set the 20-year vision that's going to guide development and other implementation efforts for this new urban neighborhood. The second study session is going to go into an overall progress report for the Wilburton Vision implementation, and that includes an overview of the draft land use code that is out for public review right now. For these efforts, we are representing the work of many other staff members, board and commission volunteers, consultants, and many voices from the community that have gotten us to this very important point tonight. We are asking for council consideration of the Planning Commission recommendation for the Wilburton Comp Plan Amendment. The ultimate action would come through an ordinance to amend the comp plan at a subsequent meeting. The agenda that we have for you tonight is a background on how the Wilburton area fits into the overall update of the city's comprehensive plan. We'll then go into an overview of the process and content of the Wilburton plan recommendations, and then we're going to hear directly from Chair Bargava on the Planning Commission's recommendations on the plan amendment. Volume 2 of the city's comprehensive plan includes the sub-area plans, so our focus tonight is on 2 of those sub-area plans. The primary one is the Wilburton Northeast 8th sub-area plan. It includes the area that is the Wilburton TOD study area, so the historic commercial area between 120th and 124th. We're also having an amendment to the Bellevue sub-area plan because a small portion of the Wilburton TOD area is currently in the Bellevue sub-area plan from 2009. Included in this update, we're doing policy and map amendments specifically to the transit-oriented development study area, and this has really been the bulk of the work and the community discussion is on that commercial area and the redevelopment plans. Included in your packet are also modifications in the larger Wilburton Northeast 8th area for consistency with House Bill 1110 for middle housing. So while we were amending the plan for the TOD portion, we are having a few amendments relating to 1110, so we're consistent with state law. We're also bringing forward updates to the glossary and to the future land use designations that would apply in the Wilburton area. This recommendation comes from the Planning Commission, and this is following extensive outreach and engagement, significant technical work by staff and consultants, and a formal public hearing. And it moved forward with a 6-0 vote from the Planning Commission. So we're going to share the presentation tonight. You'll hear from many voices up at the table, and then we'll have plenty of time for comments and questions of staff and Chair Bargava at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Neil. So to continue on with the presentation, we wanted to provide some context for the remainder of the discussion tonight, which is focused on Wilburton. Just in the framework of the city's overall growth strategy with respect to the periodic update, Wilburton is a really integral component of the city's overall strategy and approach to growth as we're looking for future planning efforts over the next 20 years. So a little bit of background. When City Council launched the periodic update in early 2022, which probably seems a good while away, it's been some time since we've been working through the various phases of work. Council provided direction for guiding principles to be really focused on equity, sustainability, and housing, which really have been the cornerstones for the update. They've also been the framework that the Planning Commission has used as they're making recommendations and formulating considerations on various policies as part of the update. Council directed that equity should be central to the project, both with regard to equitable outreach as well as equitable impacts to the community. Sustainability was also another key guiding principle that Council made a recommendation on, and that we should really focus on sustainability with every aspect of the project. There was also discussion about how the plan should work to reduce the city's impact on climate change and also mitigate its impacts. In addition, housing is a key discussion topic as well, and also we've spent a great deal of time both through engagement as well as the Planning Commission deliberations talking about housing and really focusing on ensuring that housing is made available and affordable to all economic segments of the community. The overall strategy for growth as part of the periodic update really builds upon the city's past growth strategy, which focuses the majority of growth capacity in our mixed-use centers, so areas like downtown, Bellevue, and Wilburton, primarily the TOD area. And so we're really continuing that trend and that vision with this update as well. The strategy provides ample opportunity to meet our growth targets that were established through the King County planning policies. It also ties very closely to PSRC's regional framework, which calls for focusing growth in centers and around transportation options, especially light rail. This is an essential component of the city's new growth strategy relating to the Wilburton TOD area, so it all really ties together closely. As you can see from the table below, table on the slide, it includes a distribution of growth over the next 20-year period. So it really relates to our overall distribution of growth relating to the 35,000 housing units and 70,000 jobs and how that's distributed within our mixed-use centers and other areas of the city. I would like to also note that in addition to what we're looking at here, as part of our proposed land use changes, both with Wilburton and also the periodic update, which will come to you in the next many months, we really have looked at adding additional capacity beyond the 35,000 housing units and 70,000 jobs. So for example, specific to Wilburton, what we're proposing or what you'd be looking at tonight is really capacity that could accommodate up to 14,000 housing units and 35,000 jobs, approximately. So just want to highlight the overall relationship between the Wilburton comprehensive plan amendments, the land use code amendments, as well as the overall periodic update. As I mentioned earlier, we launched the periodic update in early 2022. Wilburton was launched shortly thereafter. And we really have had a one city approach to evaluating environmental impacts of growth with both Wilburton, the Bellred sub-area, as well as our citywide focus on how we balance jobs, housing, and future growth. So we started this process in early 2022. We went through an EIS process, and we've had many touch points with council throughout that effort since we first started this process. We've had extensive community engagement right from the time we launched, and that continues throughout the process right up to adoption and then on to future implementation efforts. So we are here tonight to present the Wilburton policy amendments, which have gone through the Planning Commission review process. And currently, the Planning Commission is holding public hearings on the periodic update, which started last Wednesday and will continue tomorrow night. And so we anticipate we'll be bringing forward Planning Commission recommendations on the periodic update in the next many months. With that, I'm going to pass things on to Janet to continue on with the presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. So what I'd like to do this evening is to share a bit about the process as well as the progress we've made from the time we launched this initiative with council in 2022 to where we are tonight. So as Tara and Emil both mentioned, this really is a one city approach. You're hearing from us in community development this evening. We've been along the way with our friends in development services, transportation, parks, many different departments. City manager's office along the way has provided some advice, and then of course working with our planning commission. So just a lot of amazing work, and just happy to be here this evening, truly. So starting off with the launch we did with council in April of 2022, we just wanted to remind everyone here that's with us this evening that we did get a very clear direction from council in April of 2022 to please use the 2018 Citizen Advisory Committee recommendations for the Wilburton vision as our starting point. And we had a lot of discussion with you and received additional direction to consider things that could be further elevated beyond the vision. So the vision was our starting point, and then we were asked to specifically incorporate and recognize the need for having strong housing policy, including affordable housing, the consideration of our growth targets. As Tara pointed out, we've been working hand in hand with the comprehensive plan team along the way. And so Wilburton is nested and is considered in our overall city strategy for achieving growth and recognizing our responsibility to accept the future growth. Grand connection impacts are being considered. Sustainability is an important feature. Equitable access, multimodal transportation, and universal design. These were all things that we were directed to consider, and we feel comfortable that we are bringing a recommendation through the Planning Commission forward tonight that does bring that direction forward and accelerate that. So beyond the Citizen Advisory Committee study, we also wanted to just share that there are a number of other plans and studies that inform the Wilburton vision implementation and have been informed by the vision as we've moved forward. So besides the commercial area study, which resulted in the CAC vision, we have the environmental impact statement that was done in concert with the comprehensive plan. We have the Grand Connection framework work that was done and has helped inform the policy work that we're bringing forward. The Environmental Stewardship Initiative Plan is informing the work that's in the sustainability policies in particular. And then more recently, the East Rail Framework Plan that was developed with King County. We had the great celebration this weekend for the bridge over Northeast 8th. So a lot of work has been done thinking about the future of the trail and how important that will be to Wilburton. So the policies also recognize all this. So there are some very specific components to the Wilburton comprehensive plan amendments. And the way it's presented in the sub-area plan is that there is a specific vision statement that's been developed for the transit-oriented development, or TOD, area within the Wilburton sub-area. And then there are a set of recommended comprehensive plan goals and policies to guide future development within that transit-oriented development study area. The updated future land use map that does accomplish higher density opportunities and mixed-use designations for this transit-oriented area. And then, as was mentioned by Emil in the intro, that there are updated sub-area plan boundaries to recognize the small portion of the Bellred area that is within the Wilburton transit-oriented development area. So we had, as Tara mentioned, there's been a significant community engagement, not only for the comprehensive plan, but specifically for the Wilburton vision implementation. And we were fortunate enough to be able to do a lot of this engagement hand in hand with the comprehensive plan team, and have tables and specific information on Wilburton that could be shared out within the broader comprehensive plan engagement process, which has been very robust. In addition, we did have a number of community engagement touch points for Wilburton. We had 3 phases that were specific to Wilburton. The first was an onboarding or re-engagement phase that we did in the spring and summer of 2022, where we were really keen on making sure community knew that the Wilburton vision was being implemented. The vision was established in 2018. A few years had gone by. So there are new people in the community, new people to get engaged, as well as just letting folks know we're getting on it. So we did that for the spring and summer of 2022. Then we moved into the second phase, which was to reaffirm and enhance that vision. So bringing that direction that council provided to us to engage with community and ask what more can we be doing to build upon that vision that was developed in 2018. And many of the inputs we've received along the way, then it helped inform that the second or third phase of our initial engagement, which was helping us to evaluate action alternatives that were developed and studied in the EIS. So we had a lot of communication and sharing on how those alternatives were developed. We came to council, as you recall, and shared those alternatives, as well as the preferred alternative or the fourth alternative that was studied in the EIS. And so not only was council direction and planning commission input very helpful to that work, but also all the input we received from the broader community. So on the next slide, I just wanted to share some of those key themes that came out of that engagement process and helped inform the policy development in particular. And so through our multifaceted engagement activities with community and with stakeholders, we did find that the engagement theme started to center on these 4 topical areas that are on this slide. And across the continuum, we've had a lot of interest and continue to have a lot of interest in tree canopy, green spaces, recognizing there's a lot of pavement in the Wilburton study area now, looking for an opportunity for more green. Importance of small businesses, both those existing thriving small businesses as well as new small businesses and local businesses that would like to be in the Wilburton transit-oriented development area. Certainly a lot of themes about opportunity for mixed use, higher intensity of development, particularly around the new light rail station, but also consideration of the neighbors to the east, and that we need to consider the proper transition of that more intensive development as it moves towards the east. And then finally, but not least important, a lot of conversation about the importance of accommodating and having strategies around affordable housing in Wilburton, and as well as affordable, diverse opportunities for different types of housing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin, and we'll see if this mic works for him. But he is going to really take us through the heart and soul of this work that's coming to you this evening. And so Justin, I'll turn over to you, and I'm happy to switch spots if that helps.
I think we'll be good here.
Okay.
Yeah, so fantastic. Thank you, Janet. So the engagement that Janet mentioned has been important in affirming the policy direction for Wilburton. So after re-engaging with community on the CAC vision early in the project to figure out where there could be updates and further enhancements, staff really identified the following key policy moves to guide the CPA process. And you can see here on the screen, as part of the Planning Commission discussions, staff grouped these key policy moves into these major themes of open space and natural systems, cultural and community connections, and future land use. And so over the next few slides, I'll highlight some of the key or significant policy elements in the CPA that really comprise the Planning Commission recommendation and the bulk of the discussion that went on through that process. So first I want to start by highlighting policies to advance strategies around district sustainability. District sustainability can take on many different models, and Wilburton was identified early on, including as part of the Environmental Stewardship Plan, to be a potential candidate for a sustainable district, given the significant redevelopment opportunity that was present. This potential district could include actions and partnerships towards implementing sustainable ideas such as green buildings, district energy, tree canopy, and other environmental amenities, some of which already exist today in Wilburton in the form of streams, wetlands, and trails. The map on the right hand of the screen here shows what is a fairly limited distribution of tree canopy and natural features in the TOD area today, which really emphasizes the benefits of having a sustainable district policy framework for really expanding these natural features, especially in areas of the TOD area that are largely impervious today, such as kind of existing streets as well as parking lots. Within the same theme are policies on the development of neighborhood green and open spaces. And so one new feature of the updated plan is including a concept map that really illustrates potential opportunities for creating a network of walkable open spaces throughout the TOD area. With planning for the East Trail and the Grand Connection underway, these proposed policies are really helping support their implementation as really key community open spaces and spines for the neighborhood. As you can see, the Grand Connection, which is in yellow, runs east-west, terminates at the East Trail, which is the kind of the glowing green line running north-south. And these are really envisioned as community open spaces with a mix of recreational features and programs. But in addition, there are policies to support the integration of open space into future streets, into future development, as well as into the key neighborhood identity points that define the neighborhood, such as the Wilburton Trestle, Lake Bellevue, as well as the Grand Connection. So moving on, this next set of policy elements pertain to cultural and community connections and really reflect opportunities to connect communities in Wilburton through new amenities, infrastructure, and experiences. As I mentioned kind of earlier with the East Trail and Grand Connection, these are also key opportunities for trail-facing activation, with policies implementing recommendations to integrate these corridors as part of future development. Policies are also supporting activation at the street level, with the ability to integrate abundant landscaping and amenities to create a high-quality and interesting pedestrian experience. We've also heard a lot about interest in supporting economic vitality and vibrancy at a more walkable urban scale, including having smaller locally owned businesses part of the business mix as part of activating the East Trail and the Grand Connection. So policies are supporting having a broad range of active uses that are complementary with a walkable TOD environment. And policies are also supporting a more walkable neighborhood through mobility and access improvements. These largely respond to the existing conditions today for walking and cycling that makes it very challenging, but there are many different components to Wilburton that really have the bones of a transit-oriented community. It's served by bus rapid transit, light rail stations, as well as East Rail, which reinforces the need for policies that articulate having safe and convenient connections to transit and neighborhood amenities for all different modes. These proposed transportation policies provide the framework for future improvements, arterial streetscape enhancements, East Rail connections, and access into new development. And the intent for these policies is to provide both clarity and flexibility as to how these future access improvements can be implemented through the development process. And the final set of policy elements here pertain to the future land use vision for the Wilburton TOD area, which builds from the CAC vision that Janet mentioned as a high-density mixed-use neighborhood. The CAC recommendation had envisioned having the tallest buildings closest to downtown, next to I-405, then transitioning down in scale as you head to the east and southeast. Through this CPA process, staff have engaged with stakeholders and have updated this land use vision to include extending these higher densities along the Grand Connection in recognition of the unique placemaking opportunity and public benefit of the area in which East Rail, Grand Connection, and Light Rail intersect. Policies are subsequently supporting the idea of transitions by supporting the lowering of building heights towards the east to begin creating that transition between downtown and less intense areas of development to the east of the TOD area. And finally, within this future land use pattern, policies are articulating affordable housing, open space, and cultural amenities as implementation priorities. Policies are supporting diverse housing across unit types and affordability levels in order to allow a broader cross-section of the community to be able to choose to live in Wilburton, and also provides a framework for pursuing different housing approaches for achieving this vision. As part of future residential communities, policies are also supporting the ability to have ground-level community amenities, shopping, and services in order to increase access to these experiences as well as to live in the pedestrian environment. So these land use policies are supported and reflected in the proposed future land use map for this area, which really builds upon the analysis of different growth alternatives as part of the EIS process. These land use designations provide general direction on the scale and use to inform more detailed zoning that would occur as part of the LUCA. 4 new land use designations are being proposed, which are aligned with designations that are being updated as part of the larger comprehensive plan periodic update process for the entire city. But to note the ones that are relevant to the Wilburton TOD area, the highest intensities are proposed under the urban core designation, which is envisioned as the highest intensities comparable to densities in downtown, or in parts of downtown. Stepping down to high rise, which provides for development generally in the range of approximately 16 to 25 stories, and then stepping down to mid rise around the range of 7 to 10 stories. Within Wilburton, as you can see kind of in the bottom where you see the brown color, Wilburton distinguishes having residential mixed use along the edges of the TOD area, and I'll flip to the map in a moment to see how that's applied. But that is a use that is characterized as mainly residential with opportunity for having ground floor retail and services to kind of connect those areas to neighborhood amenities at a walkable scale. This contrasts with a more broader mixed-use designation, which you see in purple for the rest of the TOD area, which envisions more flexibility in developing a range of residential and non-residential uses and building types. So then, as it applies to the future land use map, this incorporates, as I mentioned, kind of different elements of different alternatives in the EIS that have been supported by stakeholders throughout this entire EIS process, particularly around having mixed-use flexibility and high-rise density in areas proximate to light rail, Grand Connection, and East Rail. The highest densities associated with the urban core, which you see in the dark purple, are applied along the Grand Connection, which then step down to lower-scale, high-rise buildings along the major arterials. So that includes 116th, Northeast 8th, and 120th. The mid-rise designations, meanwhile, are applied where parcels are proximate to environmentally sensitive areas, including the wetland just north of Main Street, as well as Lake Bellevue, and also applied along the edges of the TOD area to provide for a transition in scale to the neighboring parks and residential areas. And so this resulting future land use map recommendation balances many different priorities that we've heard throughout the process regarding having housing and job capacity, having great transit access, having a vibrancy of uses to mark the TOD area, as well as having appropriate densities proximate to downtown, transit, and residential areas. And I just want to finally conclude with kind of the final component of this plan or this amendment, which is a sub-area boundary adjustment. So currently, the Wilburton TOD area is both in the Wilburton Northeast 8th Street sub-area as well as the Bell Red sub-area. And so the area that is highlighted in red, which is just east of Overlake Medical Center and also includes parcels around Lake Bellevue, are in the Bell Red sub-area, while the remainder of the TOD area is in Wilburton Northeast 8th. What a boundary adjustment would accomplish would bring the Wilburton TOD area entirely within the Wilburton Northeast 8th Street sub-area and would just affect a few Bell Red policies that fall within this adjusted area. These few policies would be updated as part of the Wilburton Vision Implementation CPA, while all other Bell Red policies would be addressed through the Bell Red Look Forward CPA heading to council later this year. And with that, I will pass the mic over to Planning Commission Chair Bhargava to speak to the Planning Commission process and recommendation.
Okay, thank you. Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Vishal Bhargava. I'm the current chair of the Bellevue Planning Commission. Really excited to bring to you the work that we've been working with staff on Wilburton. The Planning Commission recommended unanimously after the May 1st public hearing that City Council adopt the proposal to amend the Wilburton, Northeast 8th Street, and Bell Red sub-area plans with policies and map changes for the Wilburton TOD area. The Commission has found that the amendment satisfies all land use code decision criteria for final review of a comprehensive plan amendment, land use code 2030-150. The body of work considered the different policy goals around a number of important and often challenging topics. Throughout the process, the Planning Commission asked staff for developing policies through the lens of flexibility and, of course, the emerging conditions in this transit development area, oriented area. The Planning Commission debated a number of policy issues, such as appropriate densities of uses in the different areas of Wilburton, environmental priorities such as tree canopy and urban habitat, of course, affordable housing, multimodal access, and how these policies could successfully achieve the vision for the Wilburton TOD. With staff considering and incorporating the feedback through this long 2-year process that we've been on, the Commission ultimately concurs with the staff recommendation that the proposed amendment provides direction in shaping regulations that the Commission will review as part of the lookup process and other implementation tools to realize the ADAS transformation. Let's move to the next slide. Thanks, Samir. The Commission has had extensive discussions on policy amendments starting in the May of 2022, which was soon after the Council directed staff to proceed work on the Wilburton Vision implementation. The slide lays out the work the Commission did with the staff on the proposed amendments. The Commission had a total of 16 study sessions that occurred between May of 2022 and the May of this year, and include study sessions on draft policies and the future land use map, as well as study sessions to discuss and provide direction on inputs on technical analysis that inform the policy amendments. The review of this amendment was coordinated with the comprehensive plan update, as staff said, to ensure overlapping issues were addressed and environmental analysis covered the full range of potential changes being considered here. Quickly to the last slide. Finally, I want to provide a quick overview of the public engagement process we had. The Commission held a public hearing on May 1st and received 3 written comments and a total of 13 speakers. The Commission considered public testimony from the public hearing, as well as public feedback throughout the CPA process in developing the recommendation we bring forward to Council today. The Planning Commission had continued discussion after the public hearing too, and the key topics that came up for debate were how arterial streets were being addressed in Wilburton's transportation vision, what densities were appropriate around Lake Bellevue, Bellevue Botanical Gardens, as well as the light rail stations. Also focused on how to strengthen the policies around environmental protection and open spaces to support the vision. The Planning Commission made a recommendation on the Wilburton CPA, which included edits to a few proposed policies with an intent to strengthening the language and how the policy should be implemented. Specifically, the focus was on increasing the clarity of intent and move from what we thought was good intentions to more actionable policies. So that's it. With that, I'll hand it back to staff.
Mayor, that concludes the presentation, and we'd like to now turn it over to you for a discussion. And just as a reminder, we are asking for council consideration of this Planning Commission recommendation, and with your direction, we would bring it back to council for adoption of an ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Chair Bhargava. Thank you so much for all the time that you and your commissioners have put into this. It's been a long, long time. It's taken a tremendous amount of thought, and we just appreciate it. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up for questions, comments, discussion. I'm going to start with Deputy Mayor Malakutian, who, as liaison to the Planning Commission, was right there with you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Chair Bhargava, thank you so much for an amazing job, not just today presenting this to us, but for your leadership for the past 2 years and doing an amazing job. Please tell the whole Planning Commission that we internally was clapping hand at the end of your presentation, but because it's just not the regular thing in the council, we cannot do that. Great job, great recommendation, long hours meeting, sometimes as one of the audience mentioned till 11 p.m. My brain was not working after 10. I don't know how you guys was working with the detailed policy on this work. So congratulations. 16 meetings is a lot for a topic, but I'm very proud of you guys. I also want to thank the staff, Emil, Tara, Janet. I am so impressed by you, Justin. I don't know how you talk this fast, this elegantly, without a pause, without having anything in front of you. It is like it's amazing. But others, I think some of them are in the audience. Nick, Christina, Caleb, Kevin, Corbin, and many others that I just don't have all of the names in my brain. And I love that you guys mentioned a one city approach a lot. I think that's really manifest in this, so I'm really, really impressed. That's all of the kudos I'm going to give you. I have two questions on one specific topic, and then I have some comments. Can you go back to the slide that you have the future map? And I am really interested in if you have the maps, that you have two maps, the one that you have a different zoning for the north of the Wilburton. Do you have that? Do you have a slide that shows the staff recommendation of the top of that across the hospital, different zoning? Do you have any? So for the context for others, do you want to give a context before you do a better job, Emil, what I am trying to say between the original staff recommendation on the zoning of medical office, and then after lots of engagement with public and planning commission suggested mixed use for that parcels. Do you want to give us a context, and then I ask you some questions?
Sure. So this map up on the screen right now is the same map that we showed as part of the presentation. The one difference is there's a red colored polygon that is just between Overlake Hospital and East Rail Lake Bellevue, so it's shown up there in the red. This was part of the Planning Commission's discussion relating to medical office and life science uses. The commission had a very thoughtful discussion about it. Staff had brought forward a recommendation that really was driven by the existing zoning that's out there. So back in 2009, we did put in medical office zoning as part of the Bell Red plan amendments, and we had furthered that on for commission consideration. After a very robust discussion by the commission, they really talked about both the need for life science and medical office, but also allowing flexibility in Wilburton as well. So after that discussion, they did decide to use the high-rise mixed-use category in a way that would have it as a bit more flexible for uses in that red polygon, with the understanding that we would go back in the land use code and see how we can accommodate medical office and life science more broadly in the purple area throughout Wilburton. So I thought it was a very good discussion. That's what the commission is for policy discussions, and ultimately they did end up with the recommended future land use map that we showed as part of the presentation.
Thank you. And that area in the red, that's the original recommendation was medical office, now is a mixed use. Is that correct that mixed use provide flexibility? If a developer wants to do the life science, if they want, they choose, they can. If they want, they can do housing if they want. So there is no limitation for medical office on the floor plate or on the height. They have all of those flexibility that medical office has. That's correct?
Yeah, we're at the policy level for our discussion right now. But the policy intent of the commission was to set it up where you could do medical office and life science and provide, especially the dimensional needs for medical office that relate to the floor plate, so essentially how big a floor of a building is. Those types of uses generally want a floor plate that's a bit bigger than a typical building. So in the second part of our meeting tonight, we actually, the beauty is we do have a draft land use code that's out there, and we've been really being able to take this policy intent into the draft land use code.
And one last question, and then I have some comments. If we go with medical office, you mentioned that still there would be some potential for housing. Can you elaborate what type of housing and what would be how much of housing it can happen if it is, we go back to the original recommendation of the staff, making medical office?
Yeah, the example of the medical office and provisions for housing, the area along 116th up in Bell Red is a good example where that is medical office. It is a lower zoning, but it allows for things like senior housing and other care facilities. It's typically not all the housing included in a medical office, so that's the beauty of the high-rise mixed use, is you could do an apartment building there if that's what the market desired, or you could also do medical office or life science with the additional code provisions.
So it can be some type of housing. What percentage, if, can you put a number on that, like 30% can be housing in medical office land use, or we are not at that stage? You cannot throw any percent at me.
We usually look at broader areas, so when we talk about percents of how much might be medical office versus a different use, it's broad. It's not every building needs to be a certain percent. That's far too prescriptive when you're talking about development. But if I think the purple area does allow for significant residential opportunities and does allow for life science and medical office in the future.
Thank you. So I love the mixed-use zoning. I love the flexibility for developers. There is no denying that. But my concern would be the current trends, although we have flexibility, it means that developer can pick and choose what type they want. Because of the current trends, maybe favor residential project due to the profitability. And that may maybe neglect the need of life science facilities, and I'm going to explain what do I mean by that. And I think the best example I can give you before I go to my defending life science is if we have a park and if we have a park and we don't allocate that for park zoning and we say we leave that to developer to decide, of course the park is going to be gone and we are going to build housing because that's a more profitable thing. So that's why I'm saying we need to plan for something if we believe there is a need for that need, maybe park. We cannot just leave that to our developer or our partner to decide because the profitability comes to picture and maybe we miss something. I strongly advocate for housing. There is no deny of that. And I think the whole comp plan and Wilburton, although we are talking about target of 35,000 housing, I think what this and plus the comp plan does is the capacity of 150,000 housing. So all of these land use are making the 35,000 our target. In the full build, 150,000. The same thing for Wilburton is going to be, that map is going to be 14,000 as a build, but our target is 4,000. So allocating that small area to medical and life science would probably out of 14,000 capacity of whole is going to probably 900, 1,000 reduce. So I got the housing, but it is not that big of the deal when we provide 150,000 capacity for the city. So I really believe that we have an opportunity to prioritize medical and life science. And my reasoning and I would love to learn from all of the council members here after I'm done, is a very interesting topic for me, is we all talk about what is the Bellevue in 20 years from now. And our population is going to grow. And when the population grows, we need to match our infrastructure. The medical facilities, the senior housing, the life science research is part of that infrastructure that should match that growth 20 years. We are not doing this for tomorrow, it's 20 years from now. Diversifying our economy is something that I'm hearing in this council every day. We want to not be a tech hub. We want to bring life science. So if we allocate, if we prioritize that land for that, is going to achieve that diversification that we are talking about. It is interesting that now I'm going to be a little bit technology because I know you like that, Councilmember Lee. The deep tech and hard tech that is a future is now 20% share of venture capital. That basically the cutting edge technologies like biotech, bioengineering, medical technology, agriculture technology, biomaterial, these all benefit from life science buildings. And if we don't do anything purposefully, they are all going to be housing, is going to be 150,000 housing capacity. So what would be the solution if I tell you, hey, Emil, give me a solution. We want to diversify our economy. We want to do something to diverse tech and bring jobs and bring all of that. I think we would do a strategized zoning. We would say, hey, we have existing healthcare facilities. We have a hub. Let's just across that create another leverage existing infrastructure, attract leading research institutes and life science companies, and make that a hub. I think we should invest in our future. There are lots of high-paying jobs in this industry. Is a strength of our local economy, and we have all of these UW grad that they are not just in tech. They wanted to get a job, and that's provide that job. My last comment would be, we talk about the TOD, and we want to promote walkability and robust public transportation. That's great. That could be a great place. All of these Gen Z, new generation, if there is a life science, they wanted to commute there with not car. They wanted to commute there with some public transportation that we have. The center of all of our transportation is in Wilburton. Or if we have a senior housing, they have access to that. If they wanted to go to doctor, they have the public transportation. So when we talk about public transportation and East Trail and a Grand Connection, is not just about housing, it's about accessing to services. And I think, again, I wanted to hear from my fellow council member, but I am advocating to allocate that small area for medical office and life science zone because that's a future that we are going to have in 20 years. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask a clarifying question, then I'll move on to Councilmember Newenhouse. Are there any other areas in Bellevue that can support that industry?
Yes, the Bell Red area that you can see it's grayed out a little bit on this image because it's focused on Wilburton, but along 116th going up to 520, we do have the existing medical office zone in the Bell Red sub area. So there is quite a bit of land up that corridor. It includes the area where Children's Hospital is, and then with the flexibility, life science and other uses can occur up in that area.
What about I-90 corridor?
We have not gotten to the point of updating the zoning down there yet, but that potentially could be an area.
I only bring that up because you've said that,
Yeah.
and you and
Yep.
Jesse Canedo have mentioned that that would be a place for that industry as well. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Councilmember Newenhouse.
I'll echo Deputy Mayor's comments about wonderful job, all of you staff, just tremendous job. Chair, glad you could be here this evening. Thank you for your leadership and the excellent job the commission has done, as well as Deputy Mayor for your leadership in getting this to this point. It's fantastic. I'm largely in favor of moving this forward tonight. I have a few questions, of course, but just very impressed by the level of work and where we are today, and how long it's taken to get to this point. But it's solid work, and I always think one of the hallmarks of Bellevue is that we may take a little bit extra time sometimes, but we do it the right way. We do the right amount of outreach. We do the right amount of research and study, and be inclusive as possible to really solicit all those great ideas and feedback. So great job all around. Now, speaking of that, of inclusivity and the outreach, I just wanted to clarify one thing that I was a little bit concerned about, and one of the last slides mentioned it, about the I think we had, at the last outreach or forum, there was 13 speakers, and then 3 written, I believe that's correct. And mainly it was stakeholders, developers, which is good. That's a very important voice that we hear from. But also, what was the level of participation by residents near the end of this process as well? Because we're talking a major shift here in their neighborhood, a lot more density, traffic, et cetera. I want to make sure that while I know we did extensive outreach at the beginning of this and the CDC, et cetera, I'm just curious what that looked like near the end of this process, if you will. So I'll stop there. I've got more questions, but I'll stop there on that one.
Got it. Yeah, so the slide you referenced was regarding the public hearing.
Yes, the
right?
public
So
hearing,
we had
thank
the
you.
public
Yeah,
hearing. So
yeah.
if Janet and Justin, if you want to go into a little bit of detail on community
Sure.
engagement as we got to the hearing.
Sure, I'll start on that. So that is correct. That slide was just about the actual hearing.
Right.
But up until that point, we've certainly heard from many, many people from the first efforts we did with that re-engagement, letting people know about this initiative's here. We spent time with youth. Besides the Planning Commission, we've been at Transportation, Parks, BDAN, BNOA, Youth Link, had a lot of, I probably failed to go over all the things that were represented on that slide we
Right.
had, but we've had a lot of folks involved. We had lots and lots of involvement in the EIS process and received many, many comments
Okay.
in that joint from community members. We've also been to the Wilburton Community Association picnic, I think every year, and it's that we've been in this process, so they've been engaged. They've also been engaged with us in some of the complementary work we're doing on the Sustainable District Opportunity Assessment. We had not only stakeholders present, but organization representatives, as well as folks from that Wilburton community participating, and so been brought along with the process. So it is a good question. I'm glad you've asked that. Why weren't they at the hearing? And we really we know they were all notified, so we have to believe they're hopefully feeling fairly comfortable with where this is headed.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Yeah,
It's important.
what would be helpful for me, just going forward, and I'm not going to put you on the spot to give me a number now, but for me, it's always just important to know the kind of numbers that you were like, over the length of the project. I'd just be curious about that, just to make sure that we are really hitting and really hearing from that feedback. Sorry.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah.
Councilmember Newhouse. So we had produced a community engagement report as part of one of the phases of engagement. And through kind of a variety of activities, we have heard from kind of over 350 people through kind of various outreach events that we've done. I would say one of the major touch points we've had was a community open house back in August of 2023.
Okay.
And that particular event was off the heels of Planning Commission having some very robust discussion about the key policy moves that were informing what the CPA would be. And so those were brought to the community. So they had an opportunity to really weigh in on and shape the policies that were already at a stage where it was like, yes, these are heading in the right direction, community, let's hear more regarding how you think these are going to affect change in your neighborhood. And I think we got some really great feedback from that, and that has informed the refinements to policies we brought back to Planning Commission the following year.
Okay, great. That's what I want to hear. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Getting back to the comment that Deputy Mayor brought up about the kind of medical district or life sciences, I kind of see them a little bit differently, and I really appreciate that part of the discussion. To me, like on the medical side, it seems that's kind of shifted a little bit in terms of the way the medical wants to integrate into community. For example, the Target on 116th, right? On top of that Target is a medical facility, right? And I know a lot of people, when they get sick or they have to go for their physical, they go to Bell Square to get that done, right? So there's not necessarily, I feel like it's necessary to have a district per se, because it just feels like, I really like the feedback that I heard from the commission and from staff that we really want to have mixed use, I believe, and understand the nimbleness and the flexibleness of that, and giving the developers the choice is really important. And I think that giving that to them, I think just naturally those medical facilities will be there. Now, the life sciences piece, I see a little bit differently, and I can understand, and I would love to hear a little bit more about that from an economic development standpoint and where we want to look like in 20 years. Do we need to formally establish a life science area in order to cultivate or incubate that type of industry? I'm not sure we do. There is innovation happening across the city in a number of different areas and in high tech, but I don't think we ever said, hey, it has to go here specifically. So I would just be curious any additional feedback or thoughts you have on my comments there.
Yeah. May I clarify a little bit too for everybody? Just also talk about what is the value of setting aside a particular zone and saying that this will be for this type of industry?
Oh, sure. Why don't we start with that one? So I think part of setting aside a certain area is that the city is showing that as part of our vision, we value that type of land use, and we're doing the land use planning from the map perspective and ultimately with the code that wants to attract that type of use.
Right.
It does mean that maybe other things can't happen there. So when you designate an area for a certain type of use, sometimes it takes time for it to actually manifest.
Right.
Just an example, we've had this MO, medical office zoning, all in Bell Red and down into this area for 15 years and haven't gotten too much there besides Children's Hospital.
Right.
So there's some patience that happens. Yeah, I agree. Medical office, it is occurring in many different areas, and it can be smaller type of medical office facilities to a bit bigger ones as well.
Right.
When you do a hospital, hospitals in Washington State do require special zoning, so hospitals are like a separate thing.
Sure.
When you
sure.
want to establish a new hospital.
Yep.
The life science, that's part of the city's future vision, is to get more life science uses in the city of Bellevue. There's no debate or question about that. That is of utmost importance. The experience we've had in Bellevue is with Alexandria, looking just north of Northeast 12th, and that area, really it comes down to making sure you have the right zoning, if they need the amenities around there, if they need the transit, the other connectivity from a auto standpoint, and larger parcels too. Oftentimes these life science uses do take up quite a bit of land to do a development.
Yeah.
Whether or not they all need to happen in one place, I don't think necessarily, let's go 30, 50 years in the future, they don't necessarily all need to be in one area. They could be in different parts of the city.
Right.
The key thing is understanding how to attract them here in the first place from an economic development standpoint, and have the right plan and code provisions in place to make sure they can build what they need to build.
Okay.
And that generally relates to floor plate sizes.
So then what we're talking about tonight and what is put before us tonight, do you feel that this accomplishes that?
What we did is we took the planning commission direction on not having a designated medical office in this area, and really moved on to look at the code. How can we now have life science, if they so chose to locate in many other areas of Wilburton, would be appropriate or possible for them.
Right.
So looking at the zoning flexibility for life science and medical office to be in a broader set than just focused in that one corner.
Okay. Chair,
If I
please.
may, just bring to some light some of the discussions we had that might help you here with, especially Deputy Mayor, your call out, and then Councilmember yours as well. The Planning Commission gave a lot of thought to a designated medical office. In fact, that was the plan coming in to this process. It was very hard to ascertain, and we asked for multiple numbers and studies to understand, do we have truly established demand for this use? Is there adequate medical office in the broader region where this demand is already being met? Do we have intentionality on someone trying to come in and make this development happen today or in the foreseeable future? And we weren't really sure. So the path that we thought was best, and to your point, the evolution of medical office in distributed smaller units, more dispersed within our neighborhoods, is also something that some of us have thought about. The idea of flexibility is becoming the key parameter when we think about a plan 10, 20 years out in
Right.
the future. While I agree with Deputy Mayor, your point of view, and it seems rational that if you want to do something, you got to set something aside for it. If we had a clear point of view on that demand, I think that could have been a direction to go. Since that is super ambiguous and the evolution of the models is not clear, we felt it's really the right thing to do is to enable that flexibility for landowners and for the overall pattern, because over time the market will create those parameters that will force development to happen if medical office is truly a need for the community. And that, I think, is, it's just a question of demand and supply.
Yeah.
Highest, best use set aside. And the only other thing is, I would add, is why, if that is the case, why just that parcel?
Yeah.
Was unclear as well.
Right,
So,
right. Good response, okay. Well, last question before I run out of time here, just quickly. So, the plan, obviously, there's a lot of intentional density here, right? Which is what we all want, and the housing, et cetera. But I think we also need to support it with the transportation infrastructure. Obviously, we're all big fans of the pedestrian and bike we can see on East Rail, Grand Connection, et cetera. But this is a massive increase in density. Do we have the necessary, under this type of growth, and especially between now and 2044, do we have the necessary transportation infrastructure to support it? Was that part of the deliberations, and when do we get more of a focus on the transportation piece in order to support this density beyond bike and pedestrian?
Yeah, so as part of the final environmental impact statement, there was a model run for the entire city, including Wilburton, to better understand those land use and transportation impacts. So those are documented in the environmental documentation. The next step is for the transportation department to do their 12-year transportation facility plan. So there is definitely work that will be underway this fall, is my understanding, when that starts. And there is significant stakeholder interest in ensuring that that effort does understand the needs for this area and other parts of the city that we are growing. So we've done quite a bit in this high-level citywide effort, but there is more implementation work to do on the transportation front.
Okay. We'll look forward to future updates on that. But we're talking about density that could meet or exceed downtown, and I feel like downtown is way ahead on that transportation infrastructure. So it's a big concern for me, especially and not only because I'm the liaison to the Transportation Commission, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done there for sure. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Great work again.
Councilmember Hamilton.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. I will echo all of the thanks that you've heard. I mean, this is just a huge body of work, super solid. Just really appreciate all the effort that's gone in. We, clearly have a strong foundation for this work. I think the fact that we centered on 3 critical guiding principles: equity, which we've said must be central; sustainability must be spread throughout each aspect; and then the final guiding principle of housing, which must be addressed comprehensively. And I think we go on to expand on that a little bit and say that the city has evaluated the current capacity for growth and determined that more housing capacity is needed to maintain a balance with job growth and plan for the city's growth target for housing units. I think the engagement process has been great. I certainly commend the Planning Commission, other city boards, a wide variety of stakeholders, and staff for their dedicated efforts over the last few years. I know there's still more engagement work that is underway, and I think that's great, a great effort there. I think the work on updating the Wilburton Northeast 8th Street Subarea Plan and Bell Red Subarea Plan is very good for both sub-areas, and I support what has been done there too. I will note in Wilburton, some new language where Wilburton TOD area serves a diverse and growing population by providing excellent access to housing, transit, parks, retail, neighborhood services, and employment. And also too, the development along 116th and Northeast 8th accommodates mixed-use high-rise development, and we transition from high-rise to mid-rise adjacent to residential areas. That seems like a great fit, a great approach. Also too, like that we're looking to support small-scale retailers along the East Trail and Grand Connection. So really glad that that is in there. Looking at the land use map, I think the work that has been done there is very impressive. Appreciate the chair's comments on that. I think the new land use designations are comprehensive, cover what we need. I do think it's critical that we continue to support a mix of uses in Wilburton, and I'm glad that we continually emphasize that. I mean, of course, housing is the main one, but not the only priority in Wilburton. And of all of the land use codes or the land use designations, 3 of them mention housing, and the 4th talks about mixed uses. So I believe strongly that we should direct staff to return with an ordinance adopting the proposed 2024 Wilburton Vision Implementation Comp Plan Amendment as recommended by the Planning Commission without any modifications. And we have a plan in front of us that is supported by the Planning Commission, all the stakeholders, and helps us meet our state, regional, and county requirements. And it's one that I think we should all support, and I look forward to voting in favor of it when it returns. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, a couple of things. On the medical aspect of it, partially, if you go out and you see where they are and you have to go to those places and everything, you learn more about it. Most people don't realize how it's put together and everything. And it's people, and the other factor in where the medical area could be located, and you can probably have more than one, is we have hospitals there, and that's very important. I think it's something that we have there in place. There are other places for housing, so it's a question of where do we need to put this best and what would be the most effective way to do this. And I think we're on a good path for that, and we made a lot of good comments about that. I think the flexibility is for the whole piece is very, very important. And we're looking at something that is, it's not going to be the same as it is now. And I think we're going to have some changes into what the areas are, and we're working on that, and I think it's good. And I really believe that the whole plan is very, very good. And I would like to see, to take into account the issue of where the hospitals are and where other units are now, and how can we work that in? And there's a lot of room for housing and all up there. So I think we're not quite completed on that, looking at that, and actually going out and talking to people who use the facilities. And particularly, there are people who need that, and it's close into town, it's close into, has transportation, everything else. So I think that's something we don't want to just say, well, we can do something else. On the other hand, we do have an area that maybe could be a part of it also, is in going for, the area on Eastgate and 405, and that whole where used to be a lot of buildings, a lot of offices there, and there's a lot of room, and that'll be developed. So we can look at that, other things as well. When you're planning something, if you just focus on what are we going to do here and not look at what's going over there and the changes, that kind of gets you stuck sometimes. So I hope we kind of take a look at that. But overall, I think it's just an amazing plan that's been done, and the work that's been very, very good, and the communications with the community, and the just excitement from the community and from people who are on the council and people who are in the audience about this and where we're going, because this is something that's going to go with us for a long, long time, and this is a very, very important piece there. And I would have to say that, Dave Hamilton said it very well, and I agree with him, and I think this is overall very, very well done. I don't think we need to go around and do a lot of changes. I think we're going to be able to put all these different pieces kind of together up there, as we have in other areas in the city. And to a certain extent, it could be a pattern for growth in other parts of the city. So we have a tremendous opportunity to do something really amazing in this city. And I just really appreciate the work that staff's done and the community and all the people engaged. People who really want this to go, and people who are saying, well, I got a problem with this, that's good. We've had those conversations. But it's just one of those things where, you know, from a council member standpoint, it's really great to have, be able to hear and know what the community has been going through and how the staff's been doing with the community, what the community's been doing. And I'm very, very positive on going forward on this in the best way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stokes. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. Oh, well done, staff. Always. I don't want to spoil you too much, you know. I'm sure lots of kudos you already heard. But I do want to compliment the Planning Commission. And I appreciate your chair, especially your last conversation about what you talk about, the intentionality and what reality is and supply and demand. I think that's very important. And so before I go into something that I want to mention, I want to also mention about Deputy Mayor's comment and question about what he's thinking. And I think that it's both. We, as I stated, you know, hospital use, it could change. It doesn't have to be one location or that. But intentionally for the business of a biotechnology or any other kind of development, economic development, we need to have it figured out. That's why there are business parks, you know, traditionally, globally. They want to provide hundreds of acres, but there's already intention there. You know, they already have people who want to come, who wants to settle there, who want bring the business there. In this case, we don't really know for sure. So I think what we have is flexibility that's built on, and we are looking for intention, looking to the future. I think that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for thinking about how a better go service, because that is very important, especially with technology, you know, really can work together. That's why we need business park as well for biotechnology and all others. Anyway, what I feel is that it's come a long time that we have this Bellevue corridor, Wilburton. You know, to me, Wilburton should be right after the downtown, because we are trying to connect the two pieces together. And if we don't develop it with a code, with a land use, we are forsaking, missing a lot of opportunities, because things we're pure waiting. You know, what's going to happen? This is the next piece that happened. We developed Bellevue corridor. That's supposed to be the next piece that follows Wilburton, but it's a gap for quite a while. So now I'm really happy, thanks to you guys. You got this thing going, and we're going to hopefully ready to go. But the next thing ready to go is, I like the plan, I like what you've done. You know, this is so important. We need more housing. One area that I was commenting when we had our briefing, the southeast corner of the thing, just east of East Trail. It seems to be that East Trail have a big influence on what the land use should be. It's a little bit lower density in brown, you know, like what is OLB, as compared to, say, purple, maybe mid-rise, high-rise, mixed use. So my thought is, you know, why should that be also a little bit of higher usage? As long as it's land there, as long as it doesn't have any adverse effect on the neighborhood, we want to have more density. We want to be able to utilize what we have. So that's just my question. We talk about that, you know. There's sometimes you worry about the neighborhood, but in this case, it's a natural division of the neighborhood, having high density, having bigger height. I don't think it's the influence affect the neighborhood very much. Especially, you already have done a very good outreach. You know, people who I hope being contacted, seeing what you are providing them, and maybe there's you know, a different consideration. You look at the map, yeah, it's right next to residential, not good.
Okay.
But in reality,
Let
maybe
them
not.
answer your question.
So can you answer that? Or if you don't, you can talk later. But please answer that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, you're referring to the area just east of East Rail down by?
Yeah, by the south, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So,
even, since I'm looking at it,
Yeah.
even up further, why not? You up 2 blocks, you already have the blue color, purple color, but why coming south, you have the brown color?
Sure. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, thank you for that question. I'd be happy to start off an answer to that, and I'd invite Justin to supplement if I missed something along the way. But the conversations we had, Councilmember Neuenhouse asked about who else we've heard from besides stakeholders, and we most definitely did hear from neighbors, folks living to the east, and they did share concerns through the EIS process, and then in the event that Justin referred to at the Botanical Gardens, was a lot of conversation about concern about taller buildings as you move further to the east. So in specific, that area that we're referring to southeast, that's near the Botanical Gardens, there is a fair amount of topography there. It starts to slope up from the East Rail Trail, and there was quite a bit of concern about buildings. Say if we were to apply a high-rise designation there, I don't think we would have won a lot of fans in the folks who've been following along in those neighboring.
Have we demonstrated the visual effect, whether they do have an impact?
Yes, we did.
Well, okay.
Thank you for that question as well. I'm happy you asked it because we can point that out in both the EIS and then following the EIS work. So both in the draft and the final, we did some modeling of what that could look like, having 3D modeling of what the structures could look like. And I'd like to also mention that even the mid-rise would allow 7 to 10 stories. So for folks living to the east, that seemed pretty intense from their perspective. But the modeling showed that at that level of density intensity, that mid-rise, the shade and shadow potential on, say, the Botanical Gardens was not an issue. But if we were to go up higher, we would potentially be finding shade and shadow to that park space as well as views. And so this really does feel like a good place we're at. We feel, at least with the recommendation we brought to Planning Commission, that we'd heard from the community. We're providing that flexibility and density, especially close to the Grand Connection, the transit station. But we really wanted to respect and reflect what we heard from the community members who live to the east. So I think that's what you see represented here.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that you have had actual demonstration and talked to the community. Appreciate that.
Absolutely, and we
Thanks.
appreciate the question because it's always nice to have the opportunity to share a little bit more with our audience about the process we went through.
So,
thank you.
One area, of course, I mentioned about right next to Lake Bellevue, similarly, right? That, is it about what we're looking at? You have purple all around it almost. Why is that not as high?
Yes, I'm happy to answer that question as well. So just to clarify, and I know we have the lights turned up again for our conversation, so it's a little hard to read the colors, but just around Lake Bellevue, just to be clear, the recommendation is for mid-rise residential. Oh, thank you, that does help. That helps me at least I just want to make sure we're clear that the recommendation is for mid-rise residential mixed use. So again, that's 7 to 10 stories would be potentially permitted. And the reason for that recommendation largely is due to the Lake Bellevue actually being a designated wetland. There are some environmental constraints any future development would need to comply.
Probably just thinking.
And we understand there are so it just seemed like that made sense. That still would allow greater intensity than what is there today even.
Good.
But it felt like to go up to high-rise probably wouldn't be feasible in that location.
I really appreciate the flexibility the chair is talking about and everybody's talking about. And also maybe the future later, if proven to be high, more intensity. I think that really makes a lot of sense because the market, if the builder doesn't build, nothing happens. So it's got to be considering that. Finally, my question is consistent with Councilmember Neuenhouse, is transportation. We have heard that a lot of intersections already failing, right? So if we add more density in all the work that you're planning to do, it's not going to work. So you mentioned that the planning, transportation department would do that. But my concern is we want to make sure that develop this planning. It takes years to plan it. So I think they need to have some certainty, maybe some clear commitment that it's going to be moving along with. They're just doing plan. I think we need to have really concrete steps, code that allow what kind of transportation system would actually make this happen sooner rather than later. So I don't know who can answer that. Maybe transportation department, maybe the city manager should work with you. And economic development, obviously, they need to be pushing it as well so that it will happen. Yeah. So
Yeah,
what's your
just very, very briefly, in the EIS, we did both a build-out analysis for transportation, that clearly when you do a build-out analysis, you're gonna see a lot of impacts as you're looking well
Yes.
beyond 20 years. And then we did do that 20-year analysis that was pretty critical to get into the final EIS. It might be wise for us to do take some time to do a write-up in collaboration with DSD and transportation, because this was definitely a issue when we were doing our planning, because people are seeing a lot of upzoning and rightfully concerned about how are people going to get around in the future. So we want to make sure everybody's on the same page about what the city is committing to do to look at solutions in the future, and then go through our process to look at ideas out there, do the transportation facility plan, and then come back and work with the Transportation Commission and ultimately council on improvement ideas.
I like that a lot, because you have to do whatever you need to do, right? I think the Transportation Commission and the citizens and council, we need to look at the big picture. We need to look long term, so that we can lay down the vision for people to say, well, this is the place where I want to invest in the future. So I think that's important to have that clearly articulated so that we can show people what we're doing.
Okay,
I think that'd be good. Thank you.
thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you. Well, I actually really appreciate going last, because I feel like I've had the gift of, thank you very much, of hearing from my colleagues. And first, I echo the thank you. I mean, the fact that it's been, almost 2.5 years in the making to get us to this point is huge. And so what the 3 words that came to mind was thoughtful, inclusive, and thorough. That's what I heard in both from the staff, the planning commission, as well as the community. And to me, that's how we get to a great product. So I will just say, I'm going to start with the punchline, which is that I support the recommendation that you've provided in moving forward ahead of the overall comp plan and just getting going as soon as possible. So I'm just going to start with the punchline first. And then as I think about a couple of things I just really want to lift up that I appreciate, the fact that we're talking about an eco-district. I love that. I think that could be a framework for other areas in the city. Really love the interconnected, really total communities that we're talking about in here. We just heard that there's 25 million more for East Rail, so hopefully that will be able to get all the way through Bellevue. 3 light rail stations within walking distance. This truly is a 15-minute community right here in Wilburton. And the fact that what you've brought to us is a set of land use map and zoning that really creates the flexibility we need to be nimble for the future, as well as the little details too, like the boundary adjustment that you said, we noticed this, it should be fixed. Absolutely. So I appreciate that. And so to me, those are the things I really appreciate. And then I do have a couple of I guess, comments as I think about this. And that is that on page 15, when we talk about the policy pieces, just making sure that, if you could go to that page, we talk about, I believe housing, on page 15, I think was the one. Or slide 15. There, the policy moves, that as I think about this, we've talked a lot about housing as one of the 3 themes, and I agree with that. I also want to make sure that we're leaning into affordable commercial spaces too, and so as we move forward, what are the kind of codes and incentives and work that we can do to make sure that it truly is a whole community, which is housing, jobs, as well as a vibrant center where the commercial spaces have affordability in them. And I understand there's some regulatory landscape of what we're allowed to do, so we might need to think creatively about what's possible. So that's one of the things that I thought about. And then on page 14, you know, I agree with these themes. And what I kept thinking about is how do we move from these goals into reality as quickly as possible? So as we move forward, what does that really look like? And how do we crank that dial even more to make that happen? I appreciate the conversation too about actually the deputy mayor's comment about life sciences, and then Councilmember Neuenhuis, you separated the medical office from life science, because I will just share this one story where, you know, I actually have heard from at least one medical dental that said, you know, it would be great if we could have medical dental on lower floors and housing above, because they're having troubles actually being able to recruit workers. So if there was an ability to have affordable housing so that they actually are able to draw in workers to work in their medical offices, I think that's a really huge thing. And it seems to me what we have here doesn't preclude that from happening with the high-rise or mid-rise mixed use, so I appreciate that. On the life science, I keep thinking about, so in my day job at the Port of Seattle, there's been lots of discussion over the years about, can we take this space and draw in biomedical life sciences? And what I've realized over the years is sometimes we can do everything right and they still aren't going to fish there. So I think to the degree we can be as nimble as possible about creating a city where they want to be here. And maybe in the end of the day, they'll be more interested in Eastgate or some other area within the city. So making sure that as we look at the rest of the comp plan, that we have zoning that's nimble and would enable them to do that, I think would be important. I'm intrigued by Eastgate because Sound Transit 3 is supposed to go through that area into Issaquah. So perhaps as we think about that, and actually being right next to Bellevue College. So is that a space where they're not a hospital, but they are a teaching institution? Would proximity to Bellevue College be something that would attract life sciences? So I think about those types of things. So maybe when you're going to come to us with the overall comp plan, making sure that in that area where we know we have a lot of office vacancies, that zoning doesn't preclude us from potentially being a magnet for life sciences is something that I think about. And then I just have one last question, and I believe you had answered it before, but I just want to make sure it's on the record, that as we look at the zoning, we're not splitting parcels. So that was one of the things we had talked about, is as we look at, right there, the line between high-rise and mid and these other combinations, that we're not splitting a parcel so that somebody that's an owner of that parcel is trying to figure out like this hybrid between half your property is high-rise and the other half is mid. So could you just comment on that?
Yeah, Janet or
Sure.
Justin, do you want to clarify that?
I know when we were initially looking at some of the alternatives we studied in the EIS, there were concerns we had in some areas that were split between one level of intensity and another. And in the recommendation that was brought to Planning Commission and that they're forwarding to you, we did, we alleviated that concern in looking at that high-rise mixed use as just one category rather than splitting it. And so as we move forward and work with our colleagues in development services, and when the zoning actually gets applied, we can take a
surgical
better look at that.
Look
But
at that.
certainly was the intent to not create that. And I don't know, Justin, if there's anything I'm missing there, but that, I think it's good you brought that up, because that was something that was observed in some of the alternatives analyses, and so we took that into consideration in the recommendation we
Okay.
brought to the Planning Commission.
Yeah, no, that's great. It wasn't something in the reading materials. I just want to make sure that we're clear about what our goals are. And I'm just excited about this and look forward to adopting this and then the next step with our codes so that we can move this forward. Thanks.
Thank you. So I'm going to take a little turn here. I probably know the least about land use codes of everybody at the table here, so I have quite a few questions for myself. So I know that when we first talked about Wilburton's potential and what we wanted to see there, we talked about sustainable and equitable, and then in my mind, I added walkable and affordable. So I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing here, we're not only allowing for that, but we're encouraging that. And I know that we'll come back and do the zoning and we'll get more surgical about things, but I'm just going to talk about what I'm hoping to see, what I'm hoping not to see, and you tell me if we're doing anything that conflicts with that, if you would, tonight. So I think this is a zoning thing, but I think about in downtown how Kemper Development oriented a lot of buildings so they're narrow going east, they're narrow going north-south so that there's more view between buildings. And I think that's so effective, and I wonder, can we get that in Wilburton so we're not creating a big wall? Because Wilburton is really a view passageway between the Cascades and the Olympics, and I would just hate to cut that off or wall it off. I think about downtown Seattle where the Spheres are and how they did FAR for that property, and they said you can do 2 buildings and a community asset. You can, you get this much FAR, you can do what you want with it. You can do 2 buildings like this, you can do like this. And giving developers that variety to choose, I think will give us mixed building heights, which I would love to see. And I don't know if there's something we need to do now or if we do that later. And then with the life sciences, that's so interesting because that is something I know about. And we've talked for a long time of wanting to encourage that as an industry in Bellevue to diversify our economy. And when Alexandria bought that property north, it felt like that was a start of a great opportunity. They have globally sold a lot of their properties, and I don't know what they plan to do with that one in Bellevue. But I wonder if changing the zoning below it might affect their plans at all. I have no idea, so write that down. You can tell me when I'm done. And then the value of that property that we're talking about is there's been a lot of discussion about creating housing for the healthcare workers. And that's a great location for that. So I see the value of both. You, and as I said, Jesse has talked about maybe encouraging life sciences in the I-90 corridor. We have a lot of space for that. And so I don't really care where it goes personally. And I love the idea of being, what you said about being closer to Bellevue College. I had never thought about that. And that reflects what you said this morning about wanting more research at a research institute in Bellevue. So that's another thing to talk about at the retreat as we do our vision process. So anyway, okay, wait, there's a couple more. Sorry. We want housing in Wilburton. And we don't want to put anything that delays the development of housing, right? This should be easy for people to get in there and to build housing quickly and affordably, and hopefully that affordability to the developer is passed on to the renter or the buyer. So is there anything we need to do today that's going to help ensure that? And we're talking about sustainable infrastructure, which I'm all for. I think we should really be looking into that. I wonder if we can do some kind of a pilot project along the way. And can we do, remember, Emil, when we went to Malmö, Sweden, and they had done a sustainable, affordable housing contest there. And they had these architects come in and design buildings that were completely different from each other, but all had those 2 qualities. And I just thought that's a great way to bring that into the city. So I wonder, have we talked about doing something like that in Wilburton, and do we need to put it in tonight? So that's my those are my questions.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for all those comments. I think the current Planning Commission recommended plan for Wilburton does encompass these enough to set it on its right course. I think a lot of these are going to be valuable as we look to refine the draft land use code that's out there for stakeholder input, and as we think about the economic analysis for things like housing and how to have development occur out there, especially with the current economic situation. And then things like sustainable infrastructure and different types of housing that really focus on the environment. Those are good ideas for implementation efforts down the road. And then also looking at I-90 and other places for life science while we're thinking about it in this area in Bell Red and others.
And then, do we need to put anything in this plan about encouraging a pilot project for sustainable infrastructure, or does that happen on its own, or?
Mayor, I think we have in our draft policy, the policy recommendations, good support for that very thing. While it's not explicitly mentioned, one thing we did have a lot of conversation about is how the whole the way of doing sustainable building, and there's things that are probably being thought of we're not even aware of today. So
Right.
we didn't want to be so specific that we put all our eggs in a basket and then we find out down the road, wow, there's this great thing over here, and we focus too much attention. So we feel confident that the policies that are brought forward to you provide the right support and direction to do many innovative things for sustainability, affordable housing, et cetera. And so we're going to be talking to you in a little bit this evening about where we are progress-wise with the Land Use Code Amendment, Sustainable District Opportunity, et cetera. And all these comments are great input for us to receive tonight to help inform that work that
Okay.
we're moving forward.
It's
I
such a
think-
fine
yes.
line between encouraging the sustainability and certain types of housing and then actually getting them built. And so I don't want to do anything that actually precludes the development of housing. So
Right.
that's my goal. All right, well, thank you. I know that there were some discussion on that property by the hospital, and maybe we should tease that out and vote on that first before we vote on the full recommendation from the Planning Commission, because I don't know where everybody ended up on that. So, Deputy Mayor, do you want to make a motion just on that mixed, the high-rise mixed use versus the high-rise medical office zone?
Forgive of my lack of elegant motion, but bear with me. I moved a motion we go with the Planning Commissioner recommendation and keep that land across the hospital as a mixed-use high-rise instead of the medical office.
Second.
All right. Yes?
I'm sorry, I'm confused because I thought that's what actually is
I know.
there, so we don't have to amend anything to get that? So
Yeah.
Before we
I-
vote, I just want to make sure I'm clear
You
what
are.
I'm voting.
So how should I make the motion?
Well, I mean, I don't think we need to make a motion if we're just going to recommend the Planning Commission recommendation.
Just withdraw.
But,
No, so I just make one statement and then we can maybe, because I wanted to be on the record that I am advocating for the medical office.
okay, so that was
So,
gracious of you to make a
yeah.
motion that you're gonna vote against. Okay, all right,
I am
that's
very,
fine.
I am very graceful, and again, I don't have any problem to vote for the whole thing and just on the record, I say, and I just wanted to talk for 1 minute and a half, and then I'm okay to vote to go this move forward, because I've heard several comments and I just wanted to respond to them. First of all, there is no other medical office in Eastgate or I-90 because we already have the comprehensive plan. There is no other plan for anything. So all of your comment is great, but already the future land use for the I-90 Eastgate is already out, and there is no place for the life science. So why do we
Hold
need?
on for a sec,
Yeah.
is that true?
Right now, well, it would be going back and re-looking at the I-90 area. So right now, the I-90 area is not set up perfectly for life science medical office. The area we do have in the city, which is has been there since 2009, is all up and down the 116th corridor just north of
Are we
Wilburton.
gonna look at that as we look at the comp plan for the whole city, or at what point would we re-examine I-90?
It'd probably be a follow-up effort, you know, we would, in the next couple years, we could go back and look at the Eastgate area
Okay.
for refinements as part of our annual process.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So right now, we have an area in Wilburton that we are saying we just do housing, and we, in future, thinks about I-90 and Eastgate. But then the question was, what if there is a need of life science? And I think the need is there, because as I mentioned, right now, 20% share of venture capitalists is all of those aging technology that benefits from life science building. So the need is there. We don't have any question, and the city wants to be intentional about that. Then I think it's come to the conversation of supply and demand. And I don't think that's, supply and demand is, I am truly believer of that, but it becomes something that is too late. There is no land left when the need it becomes, because the timing is the variable that we don't know. There was a loss of supply and demand for all of these offices that are empty because something changed. The timeline is not there. Again, if we need a library, we cannot just leave to supply and demand, because supply and demand said we need housing. But if we want to be intentional to have a library in somewhere, we need to be intentional and have that library instead of just saying supply and demand decide that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If it's so in demand, why haven't they taken advantage of it?
It is in the future, because right now we are talking about 20 years in future. I think we are in the prisoner of moment that we think because it has happened right now, it's not going to happen ever. And I think we are planning for right now to 20 years.
Okay.
So I think that's the reason that I think is going to happen. And then I think the question is why there? Because we already have existing healthcare facilities. It is a hub for medical and life science development. So actually it's perfectly there because we already have existing. And my last comment is, I am here to listen to the public and community and partners. But at the end of the day, I need to make a decision that has a net positive impact for the city of Bellevue. Because we haven't heard, like if we just hear everything and we say, okay, we are just making everyone happy, that's not the net positive impact for the city right now and 20 years in future. And I believe having that land use as a medical office is a net positive impact, because we are sacrificing 900 housing out of 14,000 housing to intentionally locate a life science building that is going to be the future. Just wanted to be on the record that I'm advocating for life science land use code, but I don't have any problem to vote and not separate anything if you want me to.
No, that's fine. That was a great speech. One thing I'll let you speak, but one thing I'll ask the city manager is to make sure that if we do vote not to do life science in that area, that we come back sooner than later with an alternative place to do that, because that is one of our council goals, to have that in our city. And if we're removing where we can have it, we need to replace it.
Yeah, just to be clear, we are removing that, or I guess the planning commission recommendation is not have a designated area in Wilburton, but as we can talk about in the next study session, we do have code provisions that do allow for medical office and life science in a number of places in the Wilburton area, in the mixed-use zone.
Do you need to hear about that now before you vote?
No.
I assume you know because
I know.
you've been in
Yeah.
on the conversations,
Yeah.
okay. And just the city manager just kind of following up on that and making sure we talk about this at our next retreat too.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll also work with Emil and his team on opportunities in the future, looking at Eastgate and other parts of the city.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. I comment on the Deputy Mayor's perspective and also articulation of what you're supporting.
Thank you.
It's what you see the best for the city.
City.
And I appreciate the mayor allowing you the opportunity to
Express myself.
express that.
Thank you.
And so I support what you're saying, but I also hear that there's flexibility. So I think that's the main thing. We can accommodate both.
Thank you.
I appreciate, and we need to keep that in mind. And so with flexibility, hopefully we have time to, to capture that opportunity. That's the intentionality. That's depend on the market. If it's there, we got it. If it isn't, well, we have another option.
Thank you.
So the motion on the table is to advance the recommendation in the hospital area as recommended by the Planning Commission. It has been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You voted for it?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, that was a good discussion. Okay, so now we will have a motion to pass the entire thing, and I'm going to give Deputy Mayor an opportunity to speak to it since he's put a couple, how much time? You put like years into this as a planning commissioner
Since
and as a.
2022 May.
Yeah, okay.
Am I right?
That's right.
Right. So do you want me to read the motion?
You may speak to it before you make the motion.
I think it's great. Congratulations, it's a great milestone, and I am very honored to read the motion and we move forward.
Okay.
I move to direct staff to return with an ordinance adopting the proposed 2024 Wilburton Vision Implementation CPA as recommended by the Planning Commission.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, Chair. You did a
Thank
very
you.
good job. We can clap in here. Okay, and with that, we shall take a break and come back at 20 till. All right, let's bring it back together. Hey, you're still here. Okay, so we're on our second study session item. City Manager, would you like to introduce this?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. So you heard a little bit about this in the previous study session item, but this is an overview on the progress of items within the Wilburton Vision Implementation Initiative, and it is informed by the comprehensive plan amendment, which you just reviewed and gave direction on. So this is an update on the Land Use Code Amendment, Sustainable District Opportunity Assessment, and Multimodal Access Improvements. And there was a public review draft of the LUCA published on May 31st. Staff is engaging with stakeholders on that to get their feedback now. This is information only. And invited back to the table here, we have Emile, Janet, and Justin, and they are joined by Christina Gallant from Development Services. So with that, I will turn it over to Emile again.
Thanks for the introduction, Acting City Manager Carlson, and good evening again, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. So this portion of the evening is going to focus on information only, and we're going to give an update on a number of things that are going to complement the comp plan amendment that we just talked about at the last item. So we have similar staff up here from before, and then also joined by Christina Gallant, who's the acting Code and Policy Director down in Development Services, and her staff have been a key player in developing the land use code that's out there for public review right now. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to staff for a brief presentation.
All right, thanks, Emile. So we're really happy to be here this evening to be able to provide not only the recommendation for the CPA and the future land use map, but also to provide a progress update on the work that has been we've been underway with simultaneously with that work on development of the land use code amendment and other implementation tools that will help implement the Wilburton vision. So those items that we'll be going over with you this evening are the preliminary draft land use code amendments, talk a little bit about the affordable housing approach that we're looking to bring forward with that, the Sustainable District Opportunity Assessment, which we also refer to as the Sustainable District Framework, work that is underway, and then finally the multimodal access and walkability work that is being done. So it's more than just the land use code, and one of the things we're really excited about is that through the development of the work, through the policy work that's been done, through what we've heard from community, some of the opportunities we've had along the way. Some of us went to Copenhagen with Mayor and Councilmember Zahn and the Deputy Mayor and others. That's been very inspirational, and that took place during our time together working on this. So those are all things that are helping inform the work, and we think we'll be able to deliver more than just the original direction, which was the CPA and the LUCA. There are more pieces that are coming along, so we're pretty excited about that. So as I just said, the land use code is definitely an important tool. It is really in the forefront of the work we are doing, along with the comprehensive plan amendment. But there's more than just the land use code, as I just mentioned. And so this slide was included in our slide deck just to highlight some of those key aspects of the land use code. Obviously, the land uses that are permitted, the way sites are organized, density and dimensional standards, all the things you hear about, and you've already raised a few questions about some of these things this evening with us in the earlier study session. So how we might approach landscaping, design and development standards, and then incentives that bring some of the things we're looking for that might go above and beyond development that just strictly meets the code requirements. But beyond that, there are many other things that we're paying attention to as we work on tools like the land use code, and those are recognition that there are public-private partnerships that bring new development and resources and infrastructure to the Wilburton area. Other plans and programs, like we talked about earlier, the East Wales Framework Plan, the Grand Connection work, all those things we have to pay attention to when we're developing these tools. Capital improvements that are underway related to some, again, the Grand Connection, East Rail, and other initiatives. And of course, the interagency coordination, working with the county, Sound Transit, et cetera, and financing mechanism, and many more than we could fit on this slide. So with that, I'm just going to hand it off to Christina to walk us through, starting with the land use code amendment, give a progress update on where staff is with that work.
Thanks, Janet. So we are progressing through our draft land use code amendment to implement the vision that was just presented to you all earlier. So within our LUCA, we will be focusing on specific development regulations for that Wilburton TOD area, including looking at allowed land uses, and we are incorporating a more flexible approach there towards our permitted land uses, looking at instead of just focusing on what's allowed, but instead saying, here are the things that definitely aren't allowed and other uses are permitted. We are looking at density and dimensional standards to accommodate the type of development we need, a substantial amenity incentive program, recognizing all of these different public benefits that we want to address in Wilburton, and also looking at options for streets and access to support that transit-oriented, pedestrian-friendly vision. So we have a preliminary kind of stakeholder discussion draft that was released publicly on May 31st. And that includes some different options for consideration on how we approach affordable housing, parking requirements, and some other pieces for kind of stakeholder review. And we're incorporating kind of an iterative process with our stakeholders to get a draft out, allow for discussion and comments before releasing subsequent drafts and working through those issues together. So as noted, we have had some recent and upcoming stakeholder and community touch points. So we've provided notifications to our project mailing list that that preliminary draft was available. We have had staff available to meet stakeholders and answer questions. A few of our recent touch points since the draft was released. June 5th, we met with the Wilburton Property Owners Group and had a really robust discussion getting into the details of the LUCA. June 12th, we met with the Bellevue Development Committee also to talk through components in the LUCA. We also met with the Bellevue Downtown Association on June 18th. And on the 28th, we'll have a meeting with representatives of many of the affordable housing groups, affordable housing developers and advocacy organizations. We are also in the process of planning a community information session later this summer. So that date will be announced very soon. So in comments of what have we heard so far, we have gotten a lot of appreciative feedback from this kind of collaborative, iterative approach that we've been working through with stakeholders and our availability to work with the stakeholders and work through those different options. We've heard a lot of support for our emphasis on flexibility in this draft. At the same time, this is a big long-term vision, which that preliminary LUCA draft does reflect. And we've had a number of comments about the challenging development cycle that we're in at the moment, and thinking about how we might potentially phase in some requirements or otherwise do a transition to help development happen in the near term that still advances as much as we can towards that broader vision. So lots of really difficult pieces to navigate there. So on our general timeline, again, we've been working through that early draft this summer. We are gearing up to get a draft ready for the Planning Commission review this fall, third quarter 2024. Following Planning Commission feedback towards the end of the year, we will be anticipating coming back to City Council with that Planning Commission recommendation. And so with yes, and this is still my slide. As noted, this is a really important opportunity to advance a lot of the city's affordable housing priorities. We are, working with a district where we're increasing a lot of housing capacity. And so we have two options that we are working through, both in technical analysis and in discussion with our stakeholders for affordable housing. One option would be a mandatory approach, where we set a higher base FAR for development, but require that affordable housing be provided within that. And then if you want to go further, you get to choose from different options, including additional affordable housing to get additional density. The other option would be more incentive-based, so you have a lower base FAR, but no affordable requirements with that low base. But then to go further, you do have to do affordable housing first, and then have a menu of other public amenities to consider. So lots to evaluate between those options. But our next steps, continued stakeholder testing. And this fall, we will have that draft ready for the Planning Commission to work through, and ultimately moving on to a council recommendation. So with that, I will pass to Justin.
All right, thank you, Christina. So another update that we'd like to provide tonight is that staff is continuing to do work on the Sustainable District Opportunity Assessment. So I know that sustainability was a good discussion topic at the last study session. This opportunity assessment was commenced in November of 2023 with the goal of developing a variety of tools and strategies for implementing sustainable opportunities in Wilburton. And these were things that were identified as early as kind of the CAC vision, as well as described as well in our environmental stewardship plan. To date, there have been 2 stakeholder workshops, one in December and one in February, where city staff and our city consultant team, MBBJ, have begun to interact and discuss and solicit feedback from a number of Wilburton stakeholders regarding their sustainability priorities and what are different ways to implement them. And the timing of the LUCA, as Christina mentioned with the work on the affordable housing, provides kind of an early opportunity to begin integrating some of these sustainable opportunities as part of the code update, such as green buildings and enhanced open space incentives. We also want to note that MBBJ is also our consultant on urban design guidelines, so there's also some great synergy in terms of incorporating sustainable principles and sustainable thinking into the design of sites and buildings and streets. Beyond the LUCA, there is continued work on an implementation approach that will engage stakeholders with testing district project concepts, with helping identify different partnerships, as well as beginning to evaluate district certification as a route that Wilburton might take. So LEAD for communities, so LEAD is short for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. This is one potential certification framework that is being analyzed at the staff level. But the purpose of this framework would be really to encompass different performance indicators, social, economic, environmental, those types of indicators to really assess if Wilburton qualifies as a LEED certified neighborhood through both current and future sustainability implementation. So part of this analysis will include looking at the various costs and time trade-offs for pursuing certification as one potential route for tracking the city's sustainable performance goals. And so the scope of that implementation approach is being developed still, and so staff expects to return with further updates on progress on this assessment. So then the last update we would want to provide is regarding the different types of tools that are being used to implement Wilburton's multimodal transportation vision. So on the right-hand side of the screen here is a concept map that has been used as a graphic representation of the proposed policies that are really envisioning Wilburton as a connected, multimodal, walkable network of corridors and accessways. This updated concept really builds upon concepts that were introduced as early as the 2018 CAC report that start to illustrate conceptually where these future streets and corridors might go. But staff have really taken the opportunity over the last few months to really build upon and respond to emerging mobility needs, as well as work that is being done on the Grand Connection and the East Trail to really figure out how multimodal access really integrates with those types of investments. The other element that staff is considering in line with the theme of flexibility is considering a more flexible approach to implementing access in a way that really builds from the lessons learned and the successes in other parts of the city, such as Bellevue and downtown, and how that might apply in a more Wilburton-specific context. So this conceptual framework was shared with commissions and stakeholders to show the desired outcomes of how we intend to implement this multimodal network. On one hand, there is the LUCA as one potential implementation tool. The LUCA will address a number of kind of general access requirements, such as block length and block size, site circulation and access, site connectivity to East Trail, as well as general kind of access to development sites. Kind of additionally, the other component to this is that the city is working with a consultant team, KBG Somas, on an appendix to the city's transportation design manual. And the purpose of this appendix document is to provide more detailed guidance beyond the code and really addresses development at the project level to identify ways of designing these future corridors to meet both city standards as well as key accessibility requirements. So this guide that is to accompany the LUCA is intended to build in flexibility through development review while also responding to site-specific needs, opportunities, and constraints. We've often heard things like topography or parcel ownership as things that can often affect kind of a future multimodal pattern. So we want to really work to implement this access network in a way that is still responsive to a variety of project-based needs. And similar to the Sustainable District Opportunity Assessment work, we expect a lot of this work to coincide with the LUCA adoption so that it can be used to guide development as new projects come online. And with that, I will turn it over to Janet to close things out.
So just to wrap things up, at this point, Mayor, we'd like to turn it back over to you to lead the discussion with your fellow council members. We're interested to hear any questions you may have about the progress. We heard from you even early in the earlier session, from all of you, some of the things you're interested in. We'd love to hear more of those things, any insights, things you'd want us to consider as we move forward with this work.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start again with you, Deputy
Thank you
Mayor.
so much, Mayor. I appreciate you. Thank you again for a great job. I'm very happy that you put this draft and you are having a lot of session with all of our all the stakeholders to seek for their input. I just have one question, and that's just from my curiosity, and the answer can be very high level. But I would love to know if you can provide what is the preliminary overview of the affordable housing solution that we are seeking between mandatory and incentive. I know you are seeking inputs. I know we have a consultant that is trying to do some work for us. But if you can share anything as a preview for us, that would be awesome.
I think that's a good one for you,
Sure.
Christina.
So just to clarify, are you looking for more detail on what a mandatory versus an versus an incentive-based program would look like, or what kind of analysis
Just
goes
where
in?
are we, what are we hearing, what are we thinking the direction is going, in like a teaser of the movie, if you can give us some preview for us would be awesome.
Sure. So just to kind of recap between the two options as they're currently drafted too. So that's a key consideration, that the draft is not final. So the two options as they're set up now, under the mandatory option, we would have a slightly higher base FAR. In either scenario, your maximum FAR is the same. But that base that the project has enabled by right would be a little higher for that mandatory program. But within that base FAR, you would have to either provide affordable housing or potentially pay an in lieu fee, which is something that we're in the process of working. There's like legal analysis and technical review that goes into that. And then once you get past that base, if you want to get additional density, you're free to choose between the menu of options, whether it's additional affordable housing or other amenities such as additional open space, affordable commercial space, a number of options there. And in any event as well, a keynote in either case that affordable housing space does not count towards your base. So it's all extra no matter what within your maximum. In the incentive approach, because either way, we're trying to encourage as much affordable housing as possible. You have a lower base, but no specific requirements for public benefits with that lower base. And then if you want to go beyond the lower base, you first have to start with affordable housing as a clear priority. And then once a certain amount of affordable housing has been provided, you can then start to look at additional options there. So some key considerations. What we're hearing in early discussions, we do have a lot of support for the mandatory approach from the affordable housing advocacy side, as you might expect. We do hear some comments back and forth about trying to understand what a mandatory program would look like. Potentially some apprehension there, but working through that concept. But we have had ongoing analysis with our market consultant to understand what the impact on projects would be. That's going to be a key consideration as well with a mandatory program, making sure we're not asking for something that isn't supported by the benefit that we need, making that nexus, and also making sure it's not going to block development from proceeding.
Thank you. Mayor, I do not have any other questions. Thank you for your response.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Zahn.
Yes, thank you for the update. I'm excited to see that because ultimately, the previous presentation was about setting the map, but this is about how we move into action, which at the end of the day, the map is pretty meaningless unless we actually get to implementation. So I really appreciate, especially the slide that talks about the fact that it is both and of having which page was it? The land use code and the areas outside of it. So as I look at this, it didn't have page numbers on it, so there, that one.
This one, yeah.
But what it made me think about when I look at this is we want to make sure that we're creating flexibility and that this is also about the partnership and these pieces all working together because they're all interrelated. So making sure that we are threading the needle. So as we look at all of these tools, how do we make sure that we are setting the dial properly so we don't squelch development and at the same time we get to the affordability that we're looking for? And I'm just going to continue to repeat the drumbeat of both housing and affordable commercial spaces, whether that's for, retail, restaurants, or even childcare. I think that we know that not only housing rents are unaffordable, but it's also the commercial pieces. And so what tools amongst all of these things we might be able to use. I really like the holistic view of transit-oriented, really, community. I know we use the D. That makes it look like it's more of development, but to me, it's the whole community look and feel. I like the sustainable thinking and the lead for communities. I would like to understand a bit more about that, so maybe there's some materials you can just send, because I don't quite understand how, as development happens in chunks, we actually would pursue a lead for communities that might be developed at different times. So I would like to understand more about that. And then a couple things I didn't see in here, but maybe is embedded here in other codes, is the arts. So I'd like to think about, as we look at this, Bell Red can't be the only art district that we have. When I think about the vibrancy of this space, what does having some art and culture look like? Also want to make sure that we're thinking about innovations. So when we were in Copenhagen, we saw that for waste management, waste collection. The waste receptacles drops the waste underground into a conveyor, so you don't end up with having garbage trucks driving through your area that's mostly a pedestrian, bicycle, space. So I just think about how we create some pilots and other types of sustainable elements in there. I would recommend more than one community info session. I know it's summertime, but having one might mean that not everyone who might want to go, so I would just consider multiples. And then I also wonder about, on the comment about the economic climate, we know the interest rates are high right now and inflation. So as we look at these tools, is there a way to build in something that then can account for the variability of the economic climate? Because we know that it will fluctuate over time, and we don't want to have to keep updating our code every time it either goes up too high or down too low. So those are the main things I have. I'm just excited that we are moving forward with this, and it looks like by year end, we're intending to have this come back to us for adoption. Is that right?
At least back for introduction by the end of the year.
Okay. Well, if we can, put the step on the gas even more and get this, because I keep thinking about the fact that the light rail is going to be opening, to Seattle in another year or so. And with 3 light rail stations in this space, I think there's a lot of opportunity, and we want to keep moving. And the ability to have a space where people don't have to own a car and can actually get to all of the jobs, housing, and amenities is really going to be transformational. There's not too many other spaces in our city that we can actually create the kind of mini microcosm of a city that has all of these things in it. Thanks.
Agreed. Councilmember Lee.
Thank you. And this is where what we call rubber meets the road, right? So it's very good to talk about how this can be implemented. So appreciate all the considerations like sustainability, green energy, all that. It's all good. But one of the key, just to generally speaking, people went to Scandinavia, came back, and one of the ideas that was brought back is district heating from wastewater, right? Since we're building lots of buildings in this area, there might be something to think about. So, but another thing I want to talk about is what Deputy Mayor was saying, that we hear a lot of things from stakeholders. We do, and but at the same time, we as the council members, we need to have our vision out there as well. Hopefully, we can have a conversation and talk about it, and whichever makes sense, at the time, hopefully will prevail. So I believe in voluntary incentive rather than mandatory. Even though I understand you're saying that when you have mandatory, you would have more units. But to me, it's a supply and demand. If the builders don't build because there's no incentive that they can depend on, you're not going to have as many units built anyway, even though we may have a goal, unless the government want to step in and build it all. But I don't think we are contemplating that. I don't think that's a good model for me anyway. So that's the other point I want to make. Another one is when you talk about housing, affordable housing, That's one area I've been hearing about a lot, is in middle housing. Because there's more and more people who are saying that people want to retire, age in place. Well, a lot of people in Bellevue, were at the time when the aging people are getting to be where they need to be, accommodated. And also younger people, they're coming in, new workers. They are looking for a place, to live, to call home. So that's also the part of the middle housing, give them the opportunity to do that. So question for you then is, I know, I'm sure you're looking at those other things I would talk about already, sustainability and energy efficient, green, all that stuff. But in terms of middle housing, what is your thoughts on that? What are you doing to accommodate that vacuum?
Yeah, I'll take a stab at that one. Councilmember Lee, and when we refer to middle housing, at least in the planner realm of things, we think a lot about housing that's sort of in that in-between. In the middle, it's not quite apartment buildings and it's not single family. It's more like your 4 to 8 to maybe 12 unit, maybe 20. But I think what we're proposing, I know what we're proposing in Wilburton with the future land use map would allow for more than middle in a way. It will allow for greater density intensity than what we as planners at least think of as middle housing. That being said, I think some of the folks you're talking about, people who want to age in place, younger people looking for homes, the land use code that's being developed for Wilburton and the future land use will allow for a lot of housing opportunities that hopefully would be of interest to folks who want to age in place, stay in Bellevue, as well as younger people. But I just want to be clear, when we use that term middle housing, at least from the planning perspective, we're actually thinking of probably a little less intensity of type of development than would actually be allowed. You could do it in Wilburton, but the zoning will allow more eventually. And also, we have our whole city we're planning for, the comp plan work that's underway, and there's a lot of conversation about the mixed, where's Tara?
Middle housing.
Thank you. The middle housing, but the mixed-use centers, that's the word I was trying to think of. The conversations we've been having about citywide, about mixed-use centers, and all the opportunities there for things like middle housing, maybe a little bit less intensive than what we'd see in our growth corridor, but certainly opportunity for more people to live, hopefully closer to where they work and where they want to be and where they want to have their kids go to school and all those wonderful things. So sorry for that really long-winded answer, but it's just the middle housing thing, it's something that as planners we really think about, and I just wanted to be clear that we can bring more to Wilburton than that level of intensity, but there's a place for that middle housing in Bellevue, and we're excited for those opportunities.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It's an important subject. It's a work in progress, and it's just something that we have to work through, because all this is, in a way, somewhat new, so we just have to understand it. It's part of the conversation, and I hope we can keep it going, address the needs as they come up. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that very much. I'm glad to see us working on this in this way that really lays it out, because when we start talking about this, a lot of times where one person understands what the code is this way and somebody the other way, and sometimes we don't have all the different pieces going on. So it's good to have this. And what I like is that looking at the land use code itself, we can do a lot there, but going outside the land use code gives us a lot more opportunity to do development, and particularly in different areas where we're doing something that's kind of unique to Bellevue or parts of Bellevue and all. And I like the way that you're putting this together, and it's when you get to thinking about it, there's just one heck of a lot of stuff you have to go through on that. But I think, again, I really appreciate the fact that we're looking at this and saying, okay, this is the land use code, and outside of the land use code, these are other pieces. Because you're not just sticking to the land use code, you have these others. And a lot of times we have done some things outside the land use code without paying attention to the land use code sometimes. We haven't done that in a long time, but I think I really like the way that you put this together in talking about this. Because when we start, we're really going forward in this, and it's going to be a really humongous effort going on the next few years. And what I appreciate both this and what you've been talking about earlier is having this really set out so that the community, how the council, how the staff and everybody, so we're working together and understanding what we're trying to do and how we do it. So everybody knows what we're working on. Because sometimes in the past, we've had these things where it's clear somebody thinks we're doing something a certain way and somebody else thinks another way. And we've had some concerns with that. So I really appreciate this. The implementation tools are very important. We can come up with all the plans we want to. We can go out and get them, the materials and all. But if you don't have understanding and have your priorities and your implementation tools and how you make this go further, it's not going to work because it's all just something on paper. And I really appreciate, I think, good advancements. So we've done a lot of great things with Bellevue and the staff and the city working together. But this is, I think, a real step above in terms of this is how we get stuff done. This is how we need to do to get more affordable housing on that. So congratulations for putting this out like this. And I think we're going to really learn a lot from this. And if we make progress using this, because you have to have the tools and you have to know what we're doing. So I really, really was excited to see this and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Hamilton.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the information. Really appreciate all the outreach work that's been done and going to continue to be done going forward. I think you've earned a lot of credibility throughout the process. I think that really helps with all the discussions. I think getting the working drafts out for discussion and feedback is helpful. I'm really glad you've done that. I think it's important for all of us to remember that a working draft precedes a draft, which precedes a final draft. So it's a process. And I think it can be, a difficult and challenging process, but I am glad we're working through it. It certainly, I think, produces a lot of anxiety for all of us, myself included, and just appreciate your desire to do this deep dive and to keep everything on the table. I think too, like the deputy mayor was mentioning earlier, there's no more difficult a discussion than the one around incentive versus mandatory programs or some combination of both. I have these conversations with folks from time to time, and so I can appreciate the challenge. It's probably not as bad or difficult for me as for you, but I appreciate you pushing this forward towards a final balanced approach. I think this has also been mentioned too, but the question of how do we calibrate the code to achieve the housing production we want? Obviously that is very difficult and nobody wants to answer it in a way that takes us down the wrong path. Though I think, as we go through this, we can't let the fear of not getting it perfect keep us from moving forward with what we decide is best and then adjusting if we don't achieve the housing production outcomes we all want. Just a couple other remaining comments, just in general. I want to be sure, and I believe this is going on, but I want to be sure that we view Wilburton as a new contemporary urban neighborhood. It'll be a unique place. It's exciting to see this kind of new neighborhood take shape in our city. I want to be sure that the standards we put in place support the neighborhood. We are deep into collaborating now, and from time to time we'll go back and forth on best code. I want to be sure that the final code is clear, as Councilmember Stokes mentioned, and that everyone can focus on bringing Wilburton to life. Let's agree how to go forward, and then let's just go. I think too, we're all aware that development, it's difficult in the current economy. This has also been mentioned. Much of what we do now is in preparation for a change in the economy that we expect to be coming. I do hope that our code is flexible enough for the new project to begin as soon as possible. And I want to be sure that we understand the economic reality that those who will develop the housing, workspaces, and amenities in Wilburton will face. I think that there's plenty of effort put into that. I think that's great too. And I think, we have to look at, everybody's going to come out of the economy. We're all going to get teed up for projects. And I think it's important that we remember that the development that's going to take place is competing with the development in other cities. And, you know, we need to be sure that the projects that we want built have the best chance of moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well said. Councilmember Newenhouse.
Thank you. A lot of great comments, and appreciate all my colleagues, and we'll pile on mainly here on a couple of different items, but and also just touch on a few items, because as been mentioned numerous times this evening about the conversation of mandatory versus incentive-based approach. Challenging for sure, and earlier, you provided kind of a description of the two different approaches and who's advocating for each of those approaches. What I haven't heard, though, is what your framework is in terms of how you're going to determine and then recommend an approach. So and you might not be ready for that, given where we are on the stage right now, but that would be important for me to understand how you intend to make that recommendation going forward. And certainly there's a number of different ways to look at that, to evaluate it. Certain, you know, obviously the number of housing units developed is certainly top among them, but it's not as simple as that. In fact, you could say the more stringent and mandatory you make it, the less development there might be potentially, right? And the same works on the incentive side. If you don't get the incentive right, we're going to hurt our ability to create more and more housing and affordable housing. So that would be something I'd be interested in going forward. Also on the mailing list, curious who's all on that list. Is it the same folks that you have mentioned in some of the outreach already? I forget which slide it was on, but let me just, is that the Wilburton Properties Group, Bellevue Development Committee, BDA, et cetera? Is that who's on that mailing list for the most part?
You can go ahead.
I was fine. And feel free to correct me. I'd say it's yes and. So
Okay.
they are on the list. All of our previous commenters,
Okay.
and did a notice go out to the neighborhood associations as well.
I'm not sure about the neighborhood associations, would have to check on that one, but
Okay.
unless you know, Justin.
No.
But I know it went out to everyone who signed up on our listserv over the
Great.
course of the whole time we've been working on this initiative, and even
Okay.
prior to. There was a listserv that we inherited along with the
Okay.
Wilburton initiative, and so it's built over time.
Very good.
So
Very
it is a
good.
very broad list.
Okay,
But
terrific.
we'll look into the neighborhood associations question.
Thank you.
as
And I
well.
probably have said it too many times. You're anticipating that I'm going to bring up neighborhood association. So thank you for mentioning that, and do follow up if we haven't done that quite yet.
Certainly.
Thank you. And then on the and I just want to double down on the comments by Councilmember Zahn. I think it's extremely important from an economic development standpoint on the arts and also on the daycare. Very interested in both of those areas to incentivize that for maybe for slightly different reasons, but I see both of them as economic development drivers for our city in a large way. And then just on the transportation piece, I know we talked about that in the previous presentation, and obviously on the title of the slide there, this is a multimodal approach, but I also feel that there's, we're talking about cycling and walking, which are really important, and we need more facilities, more infrastructure for that. But I think the vehicular side of this doesn't seem to be really being called out in this presentation. I think we still have a very important need here to get cars in and out of this city, and to go to all the restaurants and doctors' offices and all the rest that's going to be in this very unique neighborhood. But I just want to make sure that that is part of the total multimodal conversation, and that as much as we want to be that 15-minute city, and as much as we want to have world-class facilities for all these, I just don't want that piece being left out of the conversation. So I'm just mentioning that important piece now as well. But thank you for all your great work, and this is a great update and great step forward. And like my colleagues have said, if there's any way we can speed this up, it would be great, because it's so true. I mean, light rail and other initiatives coming forward, the quicker we get this done, the more opportunities that we can take advantage of, or stakeholders can take advantage of. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. And then, you know, I made a lot of my comments in the other sections, so I won't repeat myself, but two things. I know that when we, way back when, allowed development up across the street from the botanical gardens, all that impervious surface caused real trouble with runoff, and we had a bunch of flooding. And I want to make sure that, I'm sure this is an obvious thing that people do, but I want to make sure we are considering the permeable surface requirement in all this development. And then I loved what Councilmember Hamilton said about, you know, mandatory versus incentive, or can we do something both? And I was thinking the same thing, because, I mean, I want to see some affordable housing in every single housing development that we create, and I want to create a lot in Wilburton. I don't necessarily want to tell the developer how to do it. You know, whether they want to put in micro housing, or they want to put in duplex, triplex, sixplex with a couple affordable or something. I mean, I know we have kind of a quota we have to create of affordable housing everywhere in the city, and this is a really good opportunity. But I don't want to really come down hard on how they get it done, just that we get what we need out of it. So I don't know how that's going to happen. I'm going to leave that to the smart people in the room, but that'll be a good conversation to see, you know, what do the developers want? What do they need in order to provide that affordable housing that we need, and what do we need from them as a community?
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you. So that was just discussion only, so we are done with that, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.